I know it sounds bad. I mean, what kind of guy wants to be employed at a freaking Long John Silver's of all places? Not this guy, that's for sure. But after a lengthy prison stint that led to moving back home with my parents at the age of 30, I was desperate for anything that would come my way. That's something they don't teach you before you commit a serious crime. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to hire an ex-con. I wasn't exactly doing myself any favors with these sleeves of tattoos sneaking up and down my arms, and the mean mug constantly stamped across my face. But hey, everybody needs money. I was more than willing to do the work. The problem was, nobody would hire me. No company, no matter how large or how small, wanted anything to do with me. I was the proverbial scum on the boot of society. And little did I know my luck was about to change. I barely even noticed it when I shuffled past. The Long John Silver's, that is. It had always been there, just a poorly lit husk of a building that no mortal creature dared enter. Honestly, I didn't know if it was open half the time. The place was a ghost town. Something seemed different about it that day, though. I scanned the decrepit building, searching for anything out of the ordinary. My eyes lit up when I realized what it was. A yellow, peeling, "We're hiring" sign was barely clinging to one of the dingy windows. Immediately, alarm bells were blaring in my head. Yeah, I needed a job, but did I really need one that badly? I pulled on my wallet and watched a small cloud of dust billow into the frigid air as I opened it. Yes, the answer was yes. I did need a job that badly. I scoffed as I made my way to the door. Mason, what are you getting yourself into? The sorry excuse for an eating establishment looked just as crappy on the inside as it did on the outside. I wasn't sure whether to be appalled or impressed. I feel like you really have to try to get a restaurant to look that gloomy. If melancholy was what the owners were going for, they hit the nail on the head. I tentatively called out as I crossed the desolate lobby and approached the counter. Nobody was manning the register. A brief thought crossed my mind. The place looked too run down for cameras. I could probably take off with the till with relative ease. No, chances were they didn't have any money in there anyway. It wasn't worth the risk. Hello, Mr. Silver? Anybody here? I'm looking for a job. I shouted, my voice carrying through the empty building. I was met with silence. I decided to wait around for another minute or so, and if nobody came to greet me, I would call it quits. I glanced awkwardly at the fading menu. I couldn't find a single item that looked even remotely appetizing. I was suddenly snatched from my reverie by a noise. Were those rubber boots? I waited in anxious trepidation as the sound grew closer and closer. Was this the end of the line? Was I about to be abducted by the ghost of Long John Silver? I was just about to hightail it out of there when a loud, hearty voice boomed from behind me. Arg! Who dares enter this here eatery? Dine at your own risk. I spun back towards the counter. I was definitely not prepared for the sight that greeted me. The man was exactly how I had pictured him. He was a burly guy, probably around 6'3", with the boots on if I had to guess. Long, thick, auburn hair protruded from beneath a bright yellow plastic rain hat. An unkempt, scraggly beard rested atop a matching yellow raincoat, and he sported an eye patch over his left eye. I couldn't imagine a more cliché fisherman if I had tried. Are you Long John? What does it look like? Of course I am. I'm Long John Silver. The man bellowed, wearing a smug grin on his face. I stared at him blankly. This had to be a joke. Wait, you're serious? No, I'm not serious. I just work here. My name's Greg, he said, dropping the phony accent. Do they always make you wear that? What, this old thing? He asked, gesturing to his outfit. I nodded. Nah, I just put it on for funsies. Wait, what the heck are you doing here? Nobody in their right mind actually eats this slop. Yeah, right, I saw that you guys were hiring, I said, slightly stunned by his statement. Oh shoot, I forgot I put that up. Yeah, we're hiring, I'm the manager. When can you do an interview? Whenever is good for you, I guess. Well, how about now? I've got nothing going on. Really, I couldn't tell. Yeah, sure, I've got my resume if you want to take a look at it, I replied, handing him a crumpled piece of paper from my back pocket. Yeah, let me take a gander. I waited with bated breath for the question that I knew would come, and like clockwork, there it was. What am I looking at here? According to this, you have a 10-year gap in employment. You're an ex-con, aren't you? I sighed, glancing down at the floor. This is how every interview went. The employer would find out that I had been to prison and they would drop me faster than a hot coal in the middle of July. No point in lying, he would find out one way or another. Yeah, I am. I've turned a new leaf though, I swear. I just need a chance. I promise that I'll do well here, Mr. Gregg. Please, The fake fisherman held up a hand, saving me any extra groveling. I don't care if you've been to the big house. Come, take a seat, we'll start your interview, he said, leading me to the nearest table. I was beaming as I slid out a dust-coated chair. I had never gotten that far before. Most employers would have kicked me to the curb already. I had a good feeling about this. First question, Greg began, resting his elbows on the grimy tabletop. What have you heard about Long John Silver's? Any of the lore, how crappy the food is? How run down the place looks, anything at all? Nothing really. People say the food's bad, but I've never met anybody who's actually eaten here before. Well, that's because no one has eaten here before. Aside from the occasional health inspector, that's it. Sometimes we get elderly folk who wander near thinking that it's a Piccadilly or a Golden Corral, but nobody really buys food here. My brow furrowed. That was such a strange thing to tell me right off the bat. This dude must have been off his rocker. The cosplay wasn't really helping his case. Can I ask you why nobody eats here? I mean, I can't imagine the food is that hard to stomach. And Greg shuddered. Oh, believe me, if you tasted it, you'd be singing a different tune. But it's not the food that scares people away. Isn't it obvious? I narrowed my eyes on him. No, not at all. This place is a front, come on. We don't have any paying customers. The dining area looks like nobody's stepped foot in it for half a century. And our slogan is, fish yeah. I couldn't come up with a lazier catchphrase if I tried. I don't get how nobody has caught on yet. Corporate's not exactly doing the best job at trying to hide it if you ask me. I pondered for a moment. He did have a point. Fish yeah is a pretty trash slogan, and I did feel a bit creeped out even stepping foot into the lobby. Come to think of it, they really weren't doing that much to throw people off their trail. Okay, I'm kinda scared to ask, but what exactly is this a front for? Greg locked eyes with me, his jovial demeanor melting away. You really want to know? Yeah, that's kinda why I asked you. He sighed, tugging at his beard. Oh, well, alright, follow me, it'll be easier if I just show ya. But fair warning, you're gonna see some messed up stuff. I've seen a guy get his head bashed into a concrete wall so hard that his brains were gushing out. I think I'll be okay. Hey, that's the spirit, right this way, Greg said, his boots squeaking against the grungy tile as we walked. He led me past the kitchen into a door that said break room in faded blue letters. He pushed it open, it creaked loudly on its hinges, echoing through the darkness. Greg then flipped a light switch, illuminating a set of concrete steps. He turned to me and glanced down to meet my gaze. You sure you want to do this? As sure as I'll ever be, after you, I said, extending a hand towards the stairs. And Greg began clomping down the steps, clutching the handrail for dear life. I didn't blame him. He was a big dude, and not to mention the fact that along tumbled down solid concrete steps would probably hurt like crazy. I followed Greg for what felt like a millennia. The temperature began to plummet the further down that we went. We must have descended at least 4 stories before we reached a door, but it was impossible to tell. I probably should have been more worried about what was down there, but in all honesty, I couldn't think of anything besides how much that climb back to the surface was going to suck. Suddenly, Greg stopped in his tracks. I nearly tripped over my own feet, trying to not slam into him. "Hey, what gives? I nearly barreled over you." "Ah, you run over me, good one. If you haven't noticed, I'm built like a brick wall. But to answer your question, we're here." Greg could see that I was puzzled. Yes, there was a door sitting before us, but we hadn't reached the bottom. "Yeah, this ain't as deep as it goes. You don't want to know what's down there," he said, a chill rippling through his body. "No, Gregory, actually, I do want to know what's down there. Being all ominous and stuff. Who wouldn't be curious after that?" "Okay, I'll take your word for it." "What's in there then?" I asked, pointing to the solid gray door that loomed ahead. "You're about to find out. Before we go in, you know to keep your mouth shut, right? Nobody likes a whistleblower." "I ain't no snitch. You don't make it out of prison alive by being a rat." "That's what I like to hear. Brace yourself, we got some weird crap in here." I nodded and Greg stooped down, holding his eye open for a retina scanner that I hadn't previously noticed. A green light flashed and I heard the locks disengage. "Whoa, that's pretty cool," I muttered, following Greg through the entryway. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Greg led me down a wide hallway. Overhead lights bathed the corridor in a sickly yellow glow. As we continued to walk, holding cells began to appear to our sides. Thick glass separated us from the things within. Once the first one came into view, Greg held up a hand, motioning for me to stop. I diligently obliged. "Before you say anything, yeah, I know this is some weird stuff. This," he said, gesturing to the expansive cells before us, "is the real reason that LJS was established." I gulped. Holding cells? Great. I had just managed to leave prison and I'd already managed to find my way back to another one. Just my luck. "So, who are you guys keeping here?" "Who? No, you mean what? These things aren't human. Take Kratos here, for example. He would eat you alive without giving it a second thought." I peered through the glass of the cell before us. The exhibit was expansive. It appeared to be modeled after a marshland. Trees dotted the enclosure and the ground was damp, coated in a thick layer of peat and various shrubs emerging from within. I squinted. It was difficult to see with the poor lighting, but after a moment I finally understood what I was looking at. A massive, scaled creature slithered toward me. It was dark as night and its yellow reptilian eyes were staring daggers into me as it moved. That gaze, it was enthralling. A soft, soothing voice began to emanate from somewhere close by. Normally that would freak me the heck out, but in that moment it didn't. It was calming almost. That captivating timbre drifted to my ears like a fluffy, unassuming cloud. I was completely entranced. "Mason, come closer. There's something I want to tell you." I absent-mindedly obeyed, my legs willing me forward on their own volition. I nearly had my nose pressed against the glass when suddenly, I felt a stinging pain coursing through my cheek. I turned to Greg, who had a devilish grin plastered across his face. "What the heck, man, did you just slap me? What was that for?" "You wouldn't respond and I didn't have a choice. You let Kratos get into your head. Make direct eye contact and you'll be putty in the palm of his. Well, he doesn't have hands, but you catch my drift." I glanced back at the serpent and nearly leapt out of my skin. Kratos was gargantuan. I hadn't noticed while under his spell, but the reptile had to have been at least 40 feet long from what I could see. Heck, it could have even been bigger than that for all I knew. The only thing that I was absolutely certain of was that it gave me the creeps. "Yeah, my bad. Let's go on with the tour," I said, shuddering at the thought of becoming a snake food. "You got it, just make sure to keep up." You didn't have to tell me twice. I was stuck to Greg's side like gum under a middle school desk after that. I averted my gaze as we continued our walk. I could feel Kratos' piercing stare boring into my temple the entire time that we passed. And I couldn't be sure, but as we left, I could have sworn that I heard a soft voice whisper, "I'll get you next time." "That's one freaky snake," I said, trotting to catch up with Greg. "You got that right. And you know what the really terrifying part is?" I shook my head unsure if I wanted to know the answer. "That thing's not done growing." My jaw fell to the floor. "Wait a minute, you're telling me that massive snake is a baby?" "Yep. Kratos will probably outgrow his enclosure eventually. Honestly though, there's a heck of a lot more messed up stuff in here than a giant reptile. We got things trapped within these walls that'll do much worse than just swallow you." "Worse than a massive snake with hypnosis? What could possibly be creepier than that?" Greg turned to me and smirked, coming to a stop before another exhibit. His devious smile made my skin crawl. "I'm glad you asked. This," he said, gesturing to the enclosure, "is one of the most evil things that we've got on display. Her name is Alice." I peered through the glass, kicking myself for asking such a stupid question. I immediately recoiled at the sight of its occupant. Again, this thing was massive. It was humanoid, standing at around 15 feet tall with antlers extending toward the ceiling. I could see it clearly amid its blizzard-like environment, thanks to the fact that its emaciated body was pressed up against the glass. Yellow glowing eyes illuminated its facial features. It stared down at me hungrily, smiling wide, and showcasing rows of sharp and jagged teeth. It ran a clawed finger down the glass, separating us, creating an ear-piercing squeak. Though I knew logically that there was no way it could reach me, I couldn't help feeling like a mouse about to be devoured by a cobra. "What the heck is that thing?" I stammered, grabbing onto Greg's raincoat like a terrified child. "Alice here is a Wendigo. We don't know exactly what happened to her, but speculation is that she had to eat her dead buddy to survive a snowstorm around 30 years ago. And this is the result." Wow, okay, lesson learned. My lips are sealed for the rest of the tour. Good, just a little further and we'll be at the control room. Got some people to introduce you to. I glanced back at the monstrosity as I timidly trailed Greg. My blood instantly turned to ice. Alice was waving at me. "God, that thing is creepy. Note to self, do not get on Alice's bad side." Eventually, we reached the end of the hall. There were 3 doors, one to each side and another up ahead. Greg sauntered up to the door directly in front of us and again stopped to have his eyeball scanned. Once he was accepted, he turned back to me. "Get ready, you're about to meet the crew. They're a, strange bunch." Cool beans, let's go." Greg swung the door open and we entered the control room. All things considered, it didn't seem like a bad work environment. 2 men, one younger and the other middle-aged, were huddled around a water cooler in the left corner. They wore yellow t-shirts and jeans with Long John Silvers emblazoned on them in blocky blue letters. Intricate control boards composed the right wall. Each was labeled with the name of a cryptid. A long metal table sat opposite them, where a woman around my age, sporting a lab coat, sat dissecting what appeared to be the corpse of a goblin. "Everybody gather round, got somebody that I want you all to meet." The team curiously obliged, lining up before us. "This is Mason, he just wandered in here looking for a job. Might be inclined to give it to him too once we make it through the interview." "Mason, this is Lloyd, he's one of our keepers," Greg said. starting with a young, clean-shaven man to my right. He looked fresh out of college, still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Lloyd offered me a smile and a weak wave, and I returned the gesture. This old guy right here is Ahmad. He's our senior keeper. Come on, Greg, I'm only 42. You're not getting any younger yourself. Anyway, nice to meet you, kid. Ahmad replied, extending a hand to me. The dude was jacked. His biceps were bigger than my head, so needless to say, I was a bit intimidated. Despite that, though, he radiated a warm, inviting aura. I grabbed his outstretched palm and immediately regretted it. Every bone in my hand was reduced to dust. And here we have Alana. She's our resident vet of sorts. She conducts research and keeps the entities in good health. Alana waved anxiously at me, only briefly meeting my gaze. She was a looker, gorgeous blue eyes, straight white teeth, the works. Hubba hubba, I wouldn't mind taking her home to Mom. Suddenly, a short brunette girl burst through the door. Her hair was disheveled and she looked panicked. We have a code red. One of the entities has escaped. I watched Greg's face drain of color. He bolted over to her, clasping his meaty hands onto her shoulders. Trina, it'll be okay, just stay calm. Tell me, which one of the entities was it? The slime girl. The moment she said that, Greg loosened up. Seriously, Trina, you get everybody all worked up over that. You locked her in the East Wing, right? Trina averted her gaze, her cheeks burning red. I mean, yeah, obviously. Hey, we're all good then. Worst that'll happen is she'll climb up the wall and try to hide on the ceiling. Lloyd, can you take care of that? He nodded and began to trot out of the room. I'll go with him. It's been a slow day for us, Ahmad said, grabbing what appeared to be a specialized tranquilizer gun on his way out. I stood there scratching my head. Greg? What's up, buddy? What the heck is a slime girl? Alana facepalmed herself. And on that note, I've got work to do, she scoffed, returning to prodding the remains at her station. Exactly what the name says, a girl made of slime, Greg replied. Trina stood beside him, shaking her head. You must be new around here, she said, pursing her lips. Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock, I muttered. Trina narrowed her eyes on me. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. This is Trina, she's our nutritionist. She's in charge of putting together the meals for all our creepy crawlies. She's sort of an assistant to Alana when she's not making lunches. Hey, I do more than help out and do a little cooking, she huffed, slugging Greg in the arm. He was completely unfazed. Oh yeah, like what? Like, Exactly, now show Mason here a warm welcome. Nice to meet you, Trina mumbled under her breath, never daring to make eye contact with me. Trina, I said a warm welcome. That was cold as ice. Try again. Fine. Trina's face contorted into the biggest fake grin I had ever seen. She looked like the Cheshire Cat overdosing. Hi, I'm Trina. Nice to meet you, Mason. I'm sure you'll make a swell addition to the team. There, happy now? Yeah, good job, Greg said, patting her on the back. Nice to meet you too, I guess. For the record, I preferred the cold greeting. That was just creepy. Trina's face turned red as a fire engine. Oh, I am gonna mess you up. You've really done it now, you drugged-out pea-brained weirdo. She fumed, charging toward me. Greg clasped her head with one hand, keeping her at arm's length. Trina aimlessly punched at the air as if she thought she was really doing some damage. Is she always like this? You've got a little firecracker in your hands. Greg sighed. Unfortunately, yes. We both stood there and watched Trina's fruitless attempted violence until her arm stopped swinging and went limp by her sides. Are you done now? Greg asked, cocking an eyebrow. Yeah, Trina sputtered, struggling to catch her breath. If I let you go, are you going to try attacking Mason again? No. The instant that Greg released her, Trina lunged for me. Greg rolled his eye and grabbed her by the waist, hoisting her over his shoulder like it was nothing. Let me go, this isn't fair, Trina shouted. futilely pounding her fist against Greg's back. "If you're gonna act like a child, then I'll treat you like one," he replied, plopping her down into a rolling chair. He pushed her into a corner and stopped, wagging a finger at her like a parent scolding a child. "You're in timeout, face the wall, and don't move a muscle until I get back, got it?" "Yeah, jerk," she muttered, pouting and folding her arms across her chest. "Alana, babysitter while I'm gone, please. She's gotta learn her lesson," Greg requested, his rubber boots squeaking against the linoleum flooring as he made his way back to me. "Got it, boss," Alana said, flashing him a thumbs up, all the while maintaining focus on her work. "Alrighty, let's go back to the lobby to finish your interview, shall we?" I nodded as Greg led the way back to my sworn enemy, the stairs. "Why can't you people invest in an elevator?" I wheezed. That climb back up was worse than I'd thought. I really needed to implement some cardio into my daily workout regimen. And Greg chuckled, his boisterous laughter ringing throughout the empty dining area. An elevator in Long John Silver's. Yeah, that wouldn't raise any red flags. "Okay, fair point," I retorted, slowly catching my breath. "I'm gonna take a seat, I'm dying over here." "Hey, take your pick, the lobby's all yours." I slid into a booth and sprawled out as Greg took his seat opposite me. He grinned at me as I finally began to regain my composure. Don't worry, you get used to the stairs over time. Now, are you ready to continue the interview?" "Yeah, I'm good now. I just have one quick question though." "Hit me with it." "Why did you show me all that? I mean, I would never in a million years, but what's to stop me from sending in an anonymous tip about this place? Kind of a big risk to go showing potential new hires that stuff, don't you think?" "I was gonna go over that later, but I might as well get it out of the way," Greg said, pursing his lips. "Who do you think would believe you? Long John Silver's is housing a bunch of monsters. Nobody in their right mind would buy that for even a second. As for incentive to keep your lips sealed, this is a government-run operation. You utter one peep and they'll send a guy to wipe you off the face of the planet faster than you can poop your pants. You catch my drift?" "Yep, loud and clear." Dang, I'm in deeper than I thought. This had better be worth it. "Moving on, we're looking for another keeper. I don't have too much work history to go off of, but I really think that you have the balls for it. After a decade in the slammer, I'm sure you can hold your own. Not to mention Alice and Kratos seem to take a liking to you," he said, wiggling his eyebrows up and down. I nearly threw up at the thought of that. The two most terrifying creatures that I had ever seen in my entire 30 years of existence taking a liking for me. Nope, no thank you. "Great, they seem friendly. So assuming I get offered the job, how much does it pay?" 200 grand a year." I instantly perked up. At that moment, I must have looked like a cartoon character with big green dollar signs in his eyes. That was more money than I had ever dreamed of. "Wow, okay, that's great. Yeah, it's not too shabby, so I think I've seen enough. I know you got what it takes. The job is yours if you want it." "I'll take it. Thank you so much, Mr. Greg. I promise that I won't let you down," I said, standing and enthusiastically shaking his hand. "That's what I like to hear. When can you start?" Greg asked, obliterating my fingers with his handshake. I can start as soon as you'll have me." "Great, fill out these papers and show up back here bright and early at 8 a.m. sharp. Glad to have you aboard," he boomed, releasing me, while producing a stack of documents from his raincoat. What the heck, does he always keep those on him? "Got it. Thank you for the opportunity, I really needed this. Don't mention it, but just so you know, this job is no cakewalk. There's a reason that we get paid so handsomely." As I would come to find out, Greg was absolutely right. I should have known that a paycheck that high comes with a mountain of risks. I left the restaurant feeling like I had won the lottery. Yeah, I just found out that monsters were real, and yes, I was absolutely terrified of interacting with them. but as long as I could learn to survive, I would be fine, right? Surely nothing could go wrong dealing with a pack of vicious man-eating cryptids. I was going to be A-okay. At least that's what I told myself. I practically skipped up to the door through the parking lot when I showed up for my first shift the next day. I was on cloud 9. 200 grand a year and I was getting to work with a hot chick. Count me in. I giddily reached for the door and as luck would have it, it was locked. I rolled my eyes. Of course, either Greg had forgotten about me or someone had decided to haze the new guy. I pulled on my phone realizing that I had no other option and I called Greg. He took a long time to pick up, but once he did, I could tell that he was woefully unprepared to tackle the day. Hey, Mr. Greg, it's Mason, the new hire. Can you let me in? The door's locked. I was met with perturbed grumbling and what sounded like sheets rustling. Oh God, I'm late again. Sorry about that, buddy. I'll have Trina come let you in. She's got something she needs to tell you anyway. Seriously, Greg, you could have sent anybody down there, preferably Alana, and you picked the adult toddler. Come on, man. Woohoo, I can't wait. Hey, that's the spirit. I'll see you when I get there. And with that, he hung up on me. I was beginning to realize that either Greg didn't understand what sarcasm was or he was a master of satire, and I was leaning toward the latter. I reclined against the side of the building, trying and probably failing not to look shady. Trina sure was taking her time. At that rate, I would have rather watched paint dry. I was beginning to nod off when the door beside me swung open. Get your sorry butt in here before... Phew, I'm out of shape. Trina sputtered, face red as a beet. From 4 flights of stairs, loser. Hey, I may be out of shape, but I can still kick your butt. And with that, the little demon began rapid-fire punching my back. Honestly, it kind of felt good. She might have gotten a knot out. Hey, thanks for that. I was feeling a little stiff. I'm sure that you probably locked me out, so that's karma for ya. I did not, maybe I did, but you deserved it. She huffed as we made our way to the break room. Look, whether I deserved it or not is up for debate, I said, holding the door open for her. But at least I didn't throw a temper tantrum and get put in timeout. Trina grumbled incoherently to herself as we descended. A smug grin inched across my face. She really was like a toddler. Oh yeah, before I forget, Greg told me over the phone that you had something to say to me. What's up? Oh, he wanted me to say sorry for yesterday, but we both know that I'm not. She retorted without even sparing a glance back at me. Fair. I've got a proposal for ya. I won't tell Mr. Greg that you didn't apologize if you give me another one of those back massages later. That got her attention. Trina stopped in her tracks, spinning around to face me. A malicious grin spread across her lips and she offered me her hand. You won't tell Mr. Calloway and I get to take my anger out on you. You got yourself a deal. I gladly accepted her handshake. Calloway, so that's his last name. Oh well, I'm still gonna call him Mr. Greg. It definitely suits him better. Trina and I proceeded to the control room in silence. I tried to keep my eyes glued to the floor to avoid any incidents like the previous day, but unfortunately, I caught Alice smiling and waving at me again. Had she even moved at all? Creepy. Once we arrived at the control room, we were greeted by the remainder of the crew. Everybody occupied their previous spots. Alana was hard at work typing something into a computer, while Lloyd and Ahmad were hanging out and talking, each holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. Hey newbie, good to see you again, buddy. Wasn't sure if you'd be back, Ahmad said, setting his cup down and making his way over to me. A couple of creepy crawlies aren't going to scare me off so easily. You're going to have to try harder than that to get rid of me. Hey, well, I'm glad you said that because today you're getting some on-the-job training. And we start right now. Follow me, Ahmad said, grabbing a tranq gun from a stand beside the door. I gulped. Why did I have to say that? Me and my big mouth. I followed Ahmad back to the area with the 3 doors. He led me to one that said, West Wing in faded, barely legible letters. Don't worry, I'll start you off with one of the more tame ones. He smirked as he held the door open for me. Uh-oh, something tells me that this won't be fun. I could feel butterflies fluttering in my stomach as the door shut behind us. I had a sinking feeling that whatever Ahmad had planned wouldn't be good. Not for me, at least. As we walked, I realized that each enclosure had a door with a screen above it monitoring the exhibit's inhabitants. "You see that?" Ahmad asked, pointing to a window encased in one of the door frames. "Yeah, what about it?" "It's one-way glass. We can see them, but they can't see us." "Oh, cool. That makes me feel a little bit safer, I guess." I was lying, it didn't make me feel any safer. Before I knew it, Ahmad came to a halt underneath one of the monitors. There was a plaque holder beside each window that had a name emblazoned on it for each cryptid. This one said, Clarissa. "Why are we stopping here? What's a Clarissa?" Ahmad facepalmed himself. "Clarissa's not the thing's species, it's her name, you nincompoop. This entity is one of the black-eyed children. Ever heard of them before?" My brows furrowed and I shook my head. "No, what are those?" "Well, according to the internet, they knock on people's doors at night and try to gain entry to their homes." "That's it, it sounds kinda lame," I scoffed. "A kid who couldn't even break an entering. Piece of cake." Well, unfortunately for everyone, the stories are tame in comparison to the real thing. This one was found at a small college. It turned out the dean had summoned all sorts of entities. Once he was killed, the creatures went with him, all of them except for Clarissa, that is. "Alright, so what do we need to do then?" Follow me, I'll show you, but be careful. Don't speak directly to Clarissa and do not touch her. She really doesn't like that," Ahmad said, punching a code on a keypad beside the door. I watched as it whirred open. I nodded diligently, obeying Ahmad's orders, and I headed toward the entrance. I felt as if something was off, something that I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I noticed it too late. Right as we were about to make it through the entryway, Ahmad sidestepped me and shoved me inside. He quickly leapt back and pressed a button on the keypad. I stared in complete shock as the door slammed shut, locking me inside. What terrified me the most wasn't the small dark room or the sinister being sitting in a rocking chair in the corner. No, what shook me to my core was the devilish grin plastered across Ahmad's face as he abandoned me to my fate. My heart dropped into my stomach and my face drained of color. What the heck, Ahmad? Feeding the rookie to an eldritch deity on his first day. Not cool, man. I hesitantly turned toward the little girl rocking back and forth slowly in the darkest corner of the room. Once I saw her face, the creaking of the rocking chair fell silent. My eyes grew wide as dinner plates. My back was pressed against the wall like the floor in front of me was made of burning magma. Clarissa was the most downright evil child that I had ever seen. Her pupils encompassed the entirety of her eyes, twin pitch-black orbs that felt as if they could consume my entire being. She was ghostly white and her face was framed by neatly kept black braids. She wore an outdated dress, Victorian era if I had to take a stab at it, along with matching shoes. The monstrosity smiled at me. Those yellow rotting teeth were enough to make my skin crawl. But the worst part was her aura. Clarissa exuded an air of malevolence unlike anyone or anything that I had ever met. It was easily 10 times worse than that of Alice, and that's really saying something. Come closer. Clarissa's demented voice floated to my ears from across the room. Her smile seemed to grow wider by the second. We were playing a deadly game of cat and mouse, and spoiler alert, I was not the cat. I vehemently shook my head, keeping my back glued to the wall like my life depended on it, which to be fair it kinda did. Please, I'm lonely. Clarissa's voice was strange. It was as if somebody had taken a little girl's voice and pitched it down an octave. A chill rippled down my spine every time that she spoke. No, I don't think that. Clarissa's eyes lit up and she greedily licked her lips. I had a sinking feeling that I was about to screw up big time. And then I remembered that something Ahmad told me. Don't speak directly to Clarissa. That's not a good idea is what I would say if I was talking to someone. Nope, just thinking out loud here, all alone by myself, just me. Clarissa's joyous expression shifted to an unsatisfied snarl. She almost had me and she knew it. Suddenly, to my surprise, the door opened back up again. Congratulations, buddy, you passed the... Smack. I socked him out right in the kisser. He glanced back at me, blood trickling down his lip. What the heck, Ahmad, you could have killed me. Really funny prank you just pulled, locking me in here with a freaking demon child. Clarissa didn't hurt you. She's harmless as long as you don't touch her or speak directly to her. That's it. I just had to make sure you were capable of following basic instructions. And that really hurt, you know that. He replied, dabbing at his wound with a napkin that he had produced from his pocket. Well, obviously. You happy now? I don't want to spend another second in the same room as that thing. Or you, for that matter. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because you're stuck with me. Ahmad grinned, slapping me on the back. Now let's go. You're not the only one who doesn't like hanging around with Clarissa. Was that really the only reason you brought me here? We didn't have anything to actually do. I mean, like maybe, I don't know, our jobs. I wondered aloud as the door whirred shut. No, not with Clarissa. That's the only upside to her. She doesn't make a mess. She won't even eat anything. All she does is sit there, stare, and occasionally try to get you to speak to her so that she can rip your insides out. Really, the only thing we need to do is dust her room every once in a while. So then, where to now? I knew I'd probably regret asking, but it's not like he was going to hide it from me. And now that the rookie hazing, now that the test is over, we're going back to the control room to pick up Lloyd and our equipment. The two of us are going to show you what being a keeper is all about. Ahmad smirked, sending a chill undulating through my body. I didn't like how he had kept doing it. It felt like he was up to something mischievous. After once again passing through multiple doors, we found ourselves back in the control room. Greg stood in the corner talking with Lloyd, dressed in his signature fishing attire. Apparently, he had finally decided to roll out of bed. Hey, there he is. Mason, glad to see you back. Greg boomed as he approached us. Yeah, right on time too, I said, a smile beginning to inch across my face. Hey, cut me some slack. This job ain't easy. No, I think I gave you some papers or something yesterday. Oh, yeah, I've got them right here, I replied, producing a crumpled wad of sheets from my back pocket. I watched Greg's expression falter as a ping of guilt stabbed my chest like an ice pick. Oh, thanks, I guess, he said, pinching the disheveled mess as if it was a dirty diaper. I'll just put this to the side for now. Ahmad, did you show him the thing? Greg asked, shooting him a wink. What the heck, Greg? He was in on this the whole time. That's one strike. Yeah, but he passed with flying colors. Lloyd and I were about to show him how to feed Oculus. Weren't we, Lloyd? Lloyd sighed, joining the group. Yeah, we were. Mr. Calloway, feel free to come watch. We might even let Mason feed him his meal. You know what, I'll take you up on that. My workload isn't too bad today, and I know how much Lloyd loves Oculus. I could see Trina snickering out of my peripheral vision. Apparently Lloyd saw her too because he didn't look happy. Oh, shut up, Trina. Keep it up and I'll substitute you for Oculus's breakfast today. He spat, scowling at her. I didn't even say anything. You just look for reasons to get pissed at me. She retorted, folding her arms across her chest. I don't look for reasons to get pissed at you. You give me reasons to get pissed at you, Lloyd said, his perturbed demeanor melting into a sly smirk. I could see a grin tugging at the corners of Alana's lips. Hey, you're supposed to be on my side, Trina shouted, glaring disapprovingly at her. No, we're all supposed to be on the same side. Alana's right, Greg interjected. We're supposed to have each other's backs. No more bickering, okay? And Trina, stop instigating this before I put you in timeout again. Well, that's not fair. Lloyd started it. Trina, Greg replied, shooting her a no-nonsense stare. She shifted her gaze to the floor. Fine, I'll be good. Thank you. Now, is everybody ready? Mason's not, Ahmad chimed in. Here, take this. He handed me what appeared to be a cattle prod with buttons on the handle. It works like this, he said, distancing himself from the group. The bottom button is low voltage, the middle one is high voltage, and the top one, well, we don't use that unless something seriously goes wrong. He demonstrated pressing each of the respective buttons. I could hear a zapping sound steadily increase as he flipped through them. Got it? Is that all I need? For now, yes. We'll need to pay a visit to the meat locker first. I nodded. The meat locker? I guess I should have known they'd have one of those with how massive some of the creatures were. I mean, Alice is a Wendigo. They only eat human flesh, right? That must mean... Ahmad and Greg led the charge while Lloyd and I lagged behind. I decided to take that opportunity to become acquainted with him and subtly squeeze some info out of him. So, about the meat locker, do some of these things eat human flesh? Lloyd pursed his lips and glanced up at me. Yeah, they sure do, and it's our lucky day because Oculus is one of them. Great. Nobody told me that I would have to handle corpses in addition to all this freaky stuff. Thanks for filling me in on that, Greg. What exactly is Oculus, and why do you love it so much? Oh, you'll find out soon enough. I just hope you don't have arachnophobia, he replied stoically. Arachno what? Come on, Lloyd, you can tell that I'm not the brightest crayon in the box. Help a guy out here. Oh well, I guess I would better wait and see for myself. Soon we found ourselves standing at the end of the hallway in the west wing. A large metal door stood before us. Ahmad grinned at me, and I really wished he would stop doing that. Mason, be prepared. Oculus's diet is peculiar, to put it lightly. Yep, sorry to burst your bubble, but Lloyd already spilled the beans. Let's just get this over with, okay? Ahmad's smile faded into a dissatisfied frown. All right, have it your way, he muttered, reaching for the door handle. Once Ahmad pulled the door open, we were attacked by a rush of cold air. I followed the group inside what appeared to be a giant refrigerator. Shelves upon shelves were lined with strange concoctions and containers, filled with an assortment of different foods. The further inside we went, the stranger the items became. A dead deer, rabbit paws, squid tentacles. And then I saw it. Once the group finally came to a halt, my stomach began to churn and I started to feel lightheaded. Because lying on the shelf before me was a beheaded human cadaver. Its skin was pale, but still, it looked fresh. Where did that come from? Like, who sends these here? I asked, dumbstruck. Though Lloyd had given me plenty of warning, it was still a shock to the system. I mean, what kind of messed up organization keeps corpses on hand? Before you say it, yeah, I know, that's called a morgue, Mason. Hate to break it to you, but this place ain't that. At least I don't think it is. Greg clasped me on the shoulder, nearly causing me to jump out of my skin. Ever wonder what happens to people who donate their bodies to science? Well, now you know. So, the government supplies them. Yep, they sure do, Ahmad said, wheeling a dolly over to the shelf. We just got a fresh shipment yesterday. Anything older than a week or so usually goes into that freezer at the end of the fridge. Waiting for these things to thaw is a pain in the butt, so be glad that we don't need to today. So, what do they do with the heads? I asked sheepishly. Not sure, but my guess is that they dispose of them elsewhere out of respect for the donor. You know, on account what the bodies are being fed to. Ahmad replied, hoisting the headless carcass onto the dolly. That makes sense, it's still pretty messed up though. Oh, don't worry, you'll be desensitized to it in no time. It might seem screwed up now, but hey, these creatures gotta eat. Greg bellowed, playfully slapping me on the back. Alright, let's get going. I don't want to have to spend any more time with Oculus than necessary. I nodded, following Lloyd and the others out the door with Ahmad pushing the corpse as he walked. My heart pounded against my chest like a jackhammer as we passed by each enclosure. I glanced up at the screen above Clarissa's room as we went. She was sitting motionless in a rocking chair, that demented smile still plastered on her face. What a creep show. Finally, we approached a door with a nameplate beside it that read Oculus. I couldn't take it anymore, I had to know. I glanced up at the screen that projected Oculus's habitat. It seemed to be modeled after a rainforest. Trees shielded the ground from view, limiting my field of vision. I thought that I wouldn't have any luck, but when my eyes drifted to the corner of the screen, I saw it. I could feel all the color draining from my face. A thick mass of web sat in the corner of the room, and in the center of that web, the biggest spider that I had ever seen. I mean, the thing was gargantuan. Though I was yet to see it up close, I could still gauge its size just from the recording. I was beginning to sympathize with Lloyd hard. I hate spiders. Here, take these, Greg said, handing me a trash bag, disposable gloves, and a towel. What? Why do I need these, and where'd you get this stuff from? I asked, perplexed. You thought that I just wore this raincoat for show. It's got some big pockets, perfect for storing things. Believe it or not, spiders crap just like every other living creature. Somebody's gotta clean it up, and it ain't gonna be me. He shrugged, grinning mischievously. Spider poop, really? That is the last thing I expected to hear. Hey Mason, come here for a sec, Ahmad said, freeing me from my staring match with Greg. Watch this. Ahmad pressed an orange button on the keypad beside the door. Purple mist began to waft down from the ceiling. My eyes stayed glued on Oculus. The beast stood and then began to sway back and forth before ultimately collapsing back into its web. And then the mist was sucked away as quickly as it had appeared. What was that? Did you kill it? Lloyd scoffed. Of course not, that would take a miracle. The mist only puts the thing to sleep. Once we get the go-ahead, we'll have to head in, dump its meal, and clean the place as quickly as we can. We'll only have about 15 minutes before it wakes up, and we do not want to be in here when it does. 15 minutes? They couldn't have given us a little more time. That's the government for you. They can afford millions in payroll and bribes to keep this on the down low, but this is where they decide to cut corners. A bunch of stingy idiots, if you ask me. I could sense a deep-seated rage bubbling beneath Lloyd's words. It was one that I could definitely relate to. Screw him, I'm with you on that. Truth be told, Lloyd was really starting to grow on me. I didn't know much about him, but he seemed like a pretty down-to-earth guy once you got to know him. You two quit flirting and get over here. We got the green light. Ahmad said, pointing to a literal green light illuminated on the keypad. Oh, the irony. We silently trudged over to him and waited with bated breath as the door flew open. My jaw fell to the floor once we had stepped inside. Somehow they had managed to create an exact replica of a tropical rainforest. Trees extended high into the air, blocking out most of the light and creating an eerie atmosphere. Of course, there were no animals, or Oculus probably would have hunted them down the first chance that it got. The only other noticeable difference was that the entire habitat was cloaked in spiderwebs. Walking through them made my skin crawl. Mason, you dumped the body near Oculus's web, then come back and help us. Oh yeah, and don't get lost, Ahmad ordered. Aye aye, Captain, I said, saluting him as he disappeared into the brush. He glanced back, only briefly rolling his eyes at my antics. Seriously, Ahmad, you're making me handle a dead body on my first day. How did you expect me to react? I dropped my things at the entrance and begrudgingly did as I was told, carefully dragging the dolly behind me so as to not accidentally drop the headless cadaver onto the ground. Honestly, it wasn't an easy task. I had to pull the thing through dirt, which made the whole ordeal even more laborious. After what had to have been about 5 minutes, I finally reached my destination. I felt a sudden surge of adrenaline when I laid eyes upon the thing. Up close, Oculus was so much more terrifying. It was easily the size of two of me put together. Its gargantuan black exoskeleton shimmered in the light like a sleek new paint job on a luxury sports car. 8 massive hairy legs dangled from their owner's web, each one sporting a razor-sharp, claw-like appendage. But the worst part was its face. 8 beady eyes seemed to be locked onto me, piercing my objectively tiny frame from their unseeing yet intense gaze. And those fangs, each one was easily the size of my forearm. What I assumed to be either venom or saliva dripped to the ground from their pinpoint tips, the mystery liquid pooling in the dirt beneath the web. My hands trembled as I dumped Oculus's meal from the dolly. My hazy vision stayed glued to the monstrosity lying before me, searching for any reason to book it out of there if need be. Though if that thing was to attack, I wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in outrunning it. I slowly backed away, dragging the dolly with me. Right when I thought that I was going to win our sickening staring match, I noticed something that made me fear for my life. It lasted less than half a second, but I swear that I saw one of Oculus's legs twitch. I didn't stick around to disprove my theory. I sprinted back to the entrance as quickly as my legs would carry me. I didn't care if I got yelled at for abandoning the dolly. I needed to get my butt out of there. I was nearly halfway back to the door when it happened. My lungs burned and my legs begged me to stop, but after what would happen next, a nauseating concoction of adrenaline and dread overtook me, fueling me to pick up the pace. Greg's panicked voice came over the intercom, shattering the eerie silence like a sledgehammer. "Everybody get out of here now. Oculus is awake. I repeat, Oculus is awake." I don't know what made me do it. I should have just kept running, but no, I glanced back only once and I immediately regretted it. I peered over my shoulder just in time to see Oculus leap down from its web and bolt into the trees. It was unnaturally fast, faster than any creature of that size should have been. I turned back with tears in my eyes. I prayed that somehow we would all make it out of there safely, that Oculus would ultimately fall in its demented game of hide and seek. But I had a sinking feeling that my prayers would fall on deaf ears. I could see the door of my salvation. It was so close. I was mere feet from it. My eyes wandered to the brush only for a moment. That thing was so powerful that they struggled to withstand its wrath. It was all the motivation that I needed. I flew through the open doorway and collapsed onto the cool linoleum. Greg released a noticeable sigh of relief, yet fear was still etched into his features. "The others, where are they?" I coughed, desperately trying to catch my breath. "Lloyd and Ahmad are still in there. All we can do now is hope with all our might that they find us before it finds them." Every second felt as if it lasted an eternity. Lloyd and Ahmad were still nowhere to be seen, and the only noise that drifted to our ears was the sound of the trees rustling. Though normally I'd be scared by that, it provided me with a small sliver of solace because it likely meant that my coworkers were still alive. "Come on, boys, you can do it," Greg murmured, staring intensely at the tree line. I was starting to doubt whether my intuition was correct. Were those two going to make it? But then we saw a silhouette. Someone or something was bolting towards us. I released a breath that I hadn't known I had been holding. It was Ahmad. His face was as red as a fire engine, and he was covered in nicks and cuts from the thick overgrowth, but he was alive. And to my immense relief, I noted that Lloyd wasn't far behind. But then my stomach twisted itself into knots, because neither was Oculus. The ground shook as the trio continued their mad dash. They were closing the distance, Lloyd and Ahmad to safety and Oculus to them. "Come on, boys, faster, run like your lives depend on it," Greg shouted amidst all the commotion. Seriously, Greg, was that supposed to be a joke? Their lives do depend on it, not the time, man. I set aside my irritation with Greg and directed my focus back to the scene unfolding before me. Ahmad burst into the hallway, skidding to a halt against the wall and collapsing onto the ground. Lloyd was the only one left. I could see the desperation in his eyes, and he was inches away. One more final push and maybe, just maybe, he would. My eyes grew wide as saucers and my jaw fell to the floor in complete shock. Lloyd had made it to the doorway, but so did Oculus. A sharp, pitch-black claw protruded from Lloyd's chest, spraying crimson across Greg's raincoat. A wet gurgling sound emitted from his throat as dark red blood bubbled from his mouth. Before any of us could react, the appendage retracted, with Lloyd still attached. I watched as Oculus clamped down on his skull with those salivating pincers, delivering a deadly dose of venom and caving his head in all with a single strike. Oculus glared at us. Each of its eyes glimmered with satisfaction. It was taunting us, rubbing salt in our wounds. And then out of the blue, it scampered away with Lloyd's lifeless body clenched into its jaws. We stood there unmoving, unblinking, just completely motionless. None of us could even begin to process what we had witnessed. I glanced over to Ahmad. He hugged his knees as tears began welling at the corners of his eyes, and Greg stared solemnly at his boots. He was standing so still that I thought he might have blacked out until he pressed the button to close the door. "No, what are you doing? We have to go back in there and get him. He could still be alive," Ahmad shouted, charging toward Greg. The faux sailor turned to Ahmad, clasping his broad shoulders in a vice grip. "Ahmad, look at me." He instead averted his gaze. "I said look at me." Ahmad reluctantly obeyed, locking eyes with our boss. "Lloyd is dead, I know that, you know that, we all know that. A single bite from Oculus is venomous enough to take down 200 men, let alone one. He's not coming back." Ahmad's bottom lip began to quiver as he spoke. "So what then? We're just gonna leave him in there. We could at least give him a proper burial. Don't you think he deserved that?" Greg pursed his lips. "You know that we can't do that, Ahmad, not right now. Either our system is faulty, or Oculus is building an immunity to the sleeping gas. Whatever the case, we can't risk retrieving the body right now. Not when there's a chance that we could lose another man." Ahmad couldn't contain his emotions any longer. Tears began to flow freely down his cheeks and he released a guttural, lamented shriek. Greg softly pulled him closer and Ahmad buried his face into Greg's blood-spattered raincoat. They stayed like that for a long time, Greg a beacon of comfort and Ahmad a devastated wreck over the loss of his colleague. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't shed a few tears myself. I had only been acquainted with Lloyd for a day, but I knew that he didn't deserve to die. Not like that. 3 years, 3 painstaking years I spent training that boy, Ahmad muttered, breaking the tense silence that permeated the air between us all. I worked every day to teach him how to handle these things, how to survive, and this was the result. I failed him. I opened my mouth to speak, but I knew that I was just a rookie with 0 experience with that sort of thing, but still, I felt like I needed to say something. I racked my brain for anything that I could think of to comfort Ahmad in that moment, but the words wouldn't come out. "You're not a failure, I am. Lloyd's death is not on you, Ahmad, do you hear me?" Greg said, staring intensely with his good eye. "Yes." Greg sternly nodded. After another moment, he turned toward me. "Mason, Ahmad, I'm giving everybody 3 days off to grieve. I'll handle your keeper duties during that time." "Thank you, Mr. Calloway," Ahmad replied, his voice sounded flat, defeated. "Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Gregg," I chimed in. "Yeah, don't mention it." The walk back to the control room was marred by a tense silence. I didn't stick around to see Greg deliver the news to the girls. Instead, I walked with Ahmad back to the surface, up the staircase, and into the dingy lobby of Long John Silver's. I don't know if it helped, but I thought Ahmad could use some company. Once we had exited the restaurant, I faced him. I'm really sorry about what happened today. I know that I'm not much help, but if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask, okay?" He nodded, producing a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from his pocket. "Yeah, thanks," he said, lighting one. Without knowing what else to say, I began to shuffle off. Suddenly, Ahmad grabbed my arm, preventing me from leaving. "You utter a word about any of that, and I will personally slit your throat, you got it?" I gulped and nodded. I was no slouch, but I highly doubted that I could take Ahmad in a scuffle if it came down to it. And that definitely was not the time. "Good, and now get out of here," he retorted, taking a long, drawn-out inhale of smoke before blowing it into the air. He didn't have to tell me twice. I booked it home. After everything I had seen, I was all too eager to plop down in bed, share a nice home-cooked meal with my folks, and pop the top on an ice-cold beer. Maybe even some liquor. Whatever I could get my hands on to help me forget. I think it goes without saying that I had some real trouble falling asleep that night. I just couldn't get that image out of my head. Lloyd's body skewered on the end of Oculus's leg. Those giant fangs encompassing his skull and crushing it like a grape. The blood gushing from his mouth like a geyser. I had seen some messed up stuff in prison, sure, but nothing even close to that. Of course, that got me thinking. I was stupid for not realizing it sooner. The insanely good salary. Most of it was hazard pay. I had unknowingly signed up for one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, and I needed to find a way out. Come on, Mason, think. How can you quit this place without being hunted down by the government? A light bulb flickered in my head. I could get the place shut down. Maybe if I left an anonymous tip over something they couldn't trace me back to, like a payphone, then the whole operation would be shut down, and I would come out of the whole ordeal unscathed. I knew that it was a harebrained scheme, but I just couldn't sit there and do nothing. My life was at stake. It took some digging, but after visiting a couple different sites and online forums, I was able to locate the closest payphone. As luck would have it, it was only a 10-minute walk from my parents' house. How convenient. As I pulled on my coats and made up some half excuse about needing something from the store to appease my mother, a thought crossed my mind. One that I should have taken more seriously. Is this a bad idea? Yeah, no kidding, it was a bad idea, but you know what they say, hindsight is always 20/20. I didn't even remember the walk to the payphone. I was so lost in thought that it felt as if I had been teleported to it. My heart thundered in my chest as I inserted my change and reached for the phone. It felt like I was doing something wrong, like I was a rotten kid about to make a prank call. But in my mind, I had to do it. I hesitantly dialed the numbers, 911. "Hello, police. What is your name and the nature of your emergency?" I would like to place an anonymous tip." "Sir, I need a name and a phone number from you." "Fine, my name's Jason and I'm calling from a payphone." "And what is your emergency, Jason?" The lady on the other end of the line already sounded perturbed. Great, I was confident that she was going to take me seriously. "I would like to report a fraudulent establishment. Long John Silver's is not really a restaurant, it's a drug front." I silently pumped my fist and patted myself on the back for thinking on the fly. If I had told her that there was an underground cryptid research facility down there, she would write me off instantly, but a drug front, now that was believable. "Sir, please don't call this number again unless you have an actual emergency. Prank calls are violations of the law and you will be charged with placing a false police report on your next offense. Is that clear?" "Wait, this isn't a joke, The line went dead. She had really dismissed everything I had told her without a second thought. I grumbled under my breath as I slunk away. I was going to need a new plan and fast. The last thing that I wanted was to end up like Lloyd. I was deep in thought, brainstorming my next move when a jet black SUV screeched to a halt on the street beside me. Two burly men wearing ski masks leapt from the vehicle and raced over to me. My heart dropped into my toes. "You've really done it now, Mason. You are messed up." "Hey fellas, no need to take any drastic measures," I said, awkwardly raising my hands in the air to show that I wasn't a threat. "We can talk this out, okay?" One of the masked men sucker punched me in the face. A rag was violently shoved over my mouth and nose. I couldn't breathe. The vile stench of whatever noxious chemicals soaked into the fabric was all that I could manage to suck in. Before I even had time to process what had just hit me, it was lights out. I lazily opened my eyes, and for a moment I had completely forgotten about the events that led up to my untimely nap. "Ah, what the heck?" I shouted, a pang of fear coursing through my body like a lightning bolt. And Greg's face was mere inches from mine. "Oh good, you're alive. Thought that we might have killed you for a minute there," he admitted, backing away from me. Upon surveying my surroundings, I noticed that we were in a large room with concrete walls and what appeared to be empty enclosures to either side of me. I glanced down and realized that my arms and legs had been bound to a chair with rope. I also noted that we weren't alone. The men whom I assumed had kidnapped me stood behind Greg, their arms folded across their chests. "I'm sure you know why you're here," Greg said, frowning and staring expectantly at me with his only good eye. My memory's kind of fuzzy. Can you give me a quick refresher?" He sighed. "Mason, you tried to call the cops and report this place. Jason, seriously, you've got to try a little harder than that, son." My brows furrowed in confusion. How did they know? "And before you ask, the local precinct is on our payroll. Say hello to Officer Garrick and Officer Jenkins. They're off duty, but they just so happened to be in the area when you decided to carry out your flawless plan." He then turned to the pair who, all the while, had remained as still as statues. "We're good, boys. Thank you for your help. I can take it from here." They didn't say a word. Each simply nodded before taking their leave. I heard the door slam shut behind them, sealing my fate. It was just me and Greg. "Look, kid, I'll cut you a little bit of slack this time and this time only. I think what you did was a knee-jerk reaction to Lloyd's passing, and that is the sole reason that I'm going to take it easy on you. Just so we're clear, once you accepted that job offer, you signed your life away. The government owns you now. It owns all of us. We're puppets in their game, and you and I both know how quickly they'll toss us to the wayside the moment that we step out of line. You're lucky that the bigwigs haven't caught wind of this. No major screw-ups, got it?" Greg spat. A dizzying concoction of emotions swirled within me once he said that. On one hand, I was immensely relieved. Greg was taking it easy on me, and my idiotic antics hadn't cost me my life. But on the other hand, I felt deep despair. My suspicions had been correct. I couldn't leave Long John Silver's until I was no longer useful to them, or until I ended up in a body bag. "Yeah, I swear on my life that it won't happen again. Thanks for letting me off the hook, I really appreciate it," I muttered, sheepishly meeting Greg's fiery gaze. "Oh no, Mason, I didn't say I was letting you off the hook. You need to learn. If I don't administer some kind of punishment, then what would deter you from trying again? I can't have that. I hope you understand," he said, trudging to the back of my chair and dragging me toward the exhibit to my right. My face, drained of color, and blood began to pound in my ears. A sudden realization smacked me like a ton of bricks. There was a reason that I hadn't recognized the room that we were in. This was the basement. I didn't know what kind of creatures they housed in that area, but I had a feeling that they were somehow much worse than anything I had been exposed to thus far. "Please, Mr. Gregg, you don't have to do this. I've learned my lesson, I promise," I begged as he placed me squarely in front of the glass. "I didn't want it to come to this, Mason, I really didn't, but you have to understand that there are real consequences for going behind my back." Greg rapped his knuckles twice against the glass. To my abject horror, something began to emerge from the shadows. Before I knew it, I was staring into the face of a teenage boy. He was wearing all black clothing with painted nails and eyeshadow. His face was pale as a ghost, his bone-white skin nearly reflective in the dimly lit room. He wore a depraved grin on his face, like he was about to have his first meal in ages, and I was next on the menu. "Mason, I want you to meet Eshma, the demon of wrath. He is currently confined to this boy's body, but nevertheless, he still wields an immeasurable amount of power. Ashma, do not kill him or cause him to lose his sanity. We just lost a keeper, so we need everybody we can to get right now. Well, I think that about covers it. You two have fun. Greg smirked, his rubber boots squeaking loudly as he walked away. Nice to meet you, Mason. I have a feeling we're going to get along just fine, Ashma bellowed, his manic grin somehow stretching even wider. And then it started. My vision grew blurry and the world around me began to spin violently. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that the vertigo would relent. Hot bile snaked up my throat and I couldn't stop myself from spewing chunks. The distinct taste of half-digested clam chowder assaulted my tongue. Disgusting. Once I opened my eyes, I didn't find myself covered in puke with my new friend staring into my psyche. No, where I had ended up, I wished I was back in that dingy room. Because over the next couple of hours, I would experience the worst pain that I had ever felt in my entire life. There was nothing but fire and scorched earth for as far as the eye could see. An endless void of destruction. That thing, it tormented me for what felt like days. Just about every method you could think of it implemented, but with a much more violent twist. I was drowned with molten lava, my eyeballs were plucked out and my eyelids were painstakingly sewn shut. My skin was peeled like a potato. I screamed and screamed, but there was nothing that I could do, and all the while that monstrosity loomed over me laughing. Like my agony was the funniest thing that it had ever witnessed, and it showed no signs of letting up. I don't know how long I was forced to endure that. It felt like days, but in reality it couldn't have lasted longer than a few hours. I'm sure you can imagine my elation when I awoke to find that I was physically unscathed. Mentally, that was another story. It took months before I was okay again. Greg's scare tactic did the trick, and since then I followed my orders to a T. It's been a little over a year since this occurred, and I'm finally finding the courage to make this post after all that time. Why though? Why now? Well, I'm living on borrowed time. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor says that it's aggressive and that I don't have much time left. I'm taking precautions, of course, but if the government does happen to discover this post, I don't care. I'm going to die soon anyway, but before I do, I need to get this out there. This story is a warning. If you're ever offered a job at Long John Silver's that seems way too good to be true, please turn it down. No amount of money is worth forfeiting your life. I'll have a number 4 meal with extra cheese, 2 Big Macs with a large fry, 3 apple pies, and a shamrock shake. Alright Stan, your total comes out to $46.50. The land whale grunted approvingly as he shoved a greasy wad of crumpled bills into Gary's outstretched palm. Here's your change, I'll call your number when it's ready. Stan trundled away to await his late-night snack as Gary and I prepared the food. Jeez man, does he have a family waiting at home or something? I whispered as Gary shoveled fries into a red and yellow box. Blair, does that man look like he's got a wife and kids? Stan is one of our regulars, you'll see him pretty often if you stick with the night shift. I grimaced as I prepared the shake. Great, lucky me. Hey, it could be a lot worse. Honestly, Stan is the least of your worries, he said as a shudder rippled through his body. We processed the remainder of the order in silence. Gary and I then shuffled to the counter, each donning a full tray. Hey Stan, orders up, Gary exclaimed as the boulder of a man darted at an alarming speed to retrieve his sodium-rich smorgasbord. He snatched the trays from us, hurriedly ambling back to his corner table. I watched in astonishment as the man inhaled his meal. Hey, could you help me sweep in the back? Best do it now before any more customers. Gary was interrupted by an obnoxiously loud alarm blaring from his pocket. Stan looked up at him, glowering at the unwelcome ringing. Sorry, I gotta take this," he said, darting to the kitchen and out of view. He returned a moment later. All the color had drained from his face and he appeared sickly, like he had suddenly caught a nasty case of the flu. "That was my Aunt Norma. She said that my parents were in a car wreck. Apparently my mom is in critical condition." He stared off into space, his brain slowly processing the tragic information that it had just received. "Gary, I'm so sorry. Do you need to call someone?" He snapped out of his trance, tears brimming in the corners of his eyes. He quickly wiped them away. No, I'll be fine." "Okay, but with all due respect, what are you still doing here? Go be with your family, dude. I can handle closing up on my own." He locked eyes with me, a stern determination creeping over his countenance. "Yeah, you're right. I need to go. Here, take my key to the restaurant. There's a list of rules in Dave's office. Go read them the first chance that you get. You need to follow them to a T, no matter how ridiculous they sound. Got it?" "Yep, I'll take care of it. Now go," I said as Gary handed me a small silver object. He sprinted out the front door, letting it slam shut behind him. I fashioned Gary's drive-through headset below my hat and headed to the back to familiarize myself with the nighttime protocols. I laboriously pushed open the door to Dave's office. You would think that thing was made from solid gold with how heavy it was. I surveyed my surroundings, my eyes immediately falling to the life-sized portrait beaming back at me. "Really, Dave? Even I'm not that self-absorbed," I muttered, continuing my search. I defaulted to the pockmarked bulletin board to my right. There they were, posted clear as day. I swiftly scanned over them. Rules for the night shift. Rule number 1, you are allowed a 7-minute grace period, no exceptions. Rule number 2, if a hooded figure knocks at the drive-thru window, do not answer it. Stay out of its direct line of sight and it will leave. Rule number 3, if Stan claims that you forgot his pickles, offer him a free complimentary chocolate shake. If he refuses, lock yourself in the office and call Dave. Rule number 4, no outside food or drink. Rule number 5, if a blood-like substance begins seeping from under the grill, mop it up until it stops. No, it's not blood. Rule number 6, an old woman in a shawl will come in at exactly 10 minutes past 1. Avoid looking at her for too long. She will not leave until you ask her where Tony is. Rule number 7, if a small child appears telling you that he's lost his mother, then ignore him. He does not have good intentions. Rule number 8, you are required to comply with the employee dress code. Speak to management if you need clarification on what is acceptable. Rule number 9, if you are alone and you feel the undeniable sensation of being watched, lock yourself in the office immediately and wait for it to dissipate. Rule number 10, the store closes at 2 a.m. Before you clock out, place 2 packages of raw burgers on the stove. Rule number 11, always leave the restaurant by 2:37 a.m. The Hamburglar does not like company. Rule number 12, failure to adhere to these rules will result in immediate termination. Do not hesitate to call Dave if you have any questions or concerns. Dave's phone number was hastily scrawled at the bottom of the page. I stared at the list, unsure of what to make of it. Was this some sort of cruel prank on the newbie? Maybe Gary was in on it. I resolved to wait and find out for myself, and I made my way back to the counter. Upon seeing me approach, Stan rapidly stood from his seat and sidled up to me. Can I help you with something?" "Yeah, you forgot my pickles." I mentally rolled my eyes. Gary hadn't been gone for 10 minutes and the fun was already ramping up. "Look, I watched my coworker make those. I know that he didn't. I began before rule number 3 crept into my head. I'm sorry, can I offer you a free shake for the inconvenience? His 4 chins flapped as he fervently shook his head. No, I don't want any more food. There is another way that you can make it up to me, though. A malicious grin inched across his face. A blanket of fear sent adrenaline bursting through my veins. I'm 16, sir, if you really think. That's not what I meant, you dumb broad. I want a refund. What? No, you already ate it all. Fine, if you won't give me my money back, then I'll have to take it from you. The massive mound of flesh began waddling to meet me behind the counter. I fled to the back, praying that he wouldn't catch me. I glanced behind me as I struggled to push open the absurdly heavy office door. Stan was barreling toward me, sending shelves of product crashing to the ground. My heart thumped against my ribcage so hard that it hurt. I had just managed to slip through the door and slam it shut when he had reached it. There was a resounding thud. He pounded his ape-like fists against the sturdy metal frame, shouting obscenities at me all the while. I'll get you, you can't stay in there forever. And he was right. I instantly ripped the yellowing piece of paper from the board and punched in Dave's number. He picked up after an agonizingly long minute of waiting. Hello, this had better be good. I value my beauty sleep. And Dave, it's Stan. The free shake didn't work. I'm trapped in the office. Dave sighed. Alright, put it on speaker and hold your phone up to the door so that it can hear me. I obliged, clenching my cracked iPhone 7 with a vice grip and sticking it close to the rattling door. Stan, can you hear me? It's Dave. The room fell eerily silent. Oh yeah? What's up, Davey? Stan, are you harassing one of my employees again? I don't need to get Mrs. Barrett on the phone now, do I? No, please, I'll behave, I swear, please, just don't call her. His voice trembled as he spoke. I don't know, that's what you said the last time. I promise that I'll never bother her again. Come on, Davey, show a little compassion. Dave took a moment to respond. Alright, but you need to go home and you need to apologize to Mrs. Blake for scaring her. Blair, I interjected, face-palming myself. Right, apologize to Blair and I'll let you off the hook. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Blaze, so, can I take you up on that free shake? No, Stan, no free shake tonight. I need you to leave. Dave said, a stern finality in his statement. Without another word, Stan angrily tromped through the kitchen and out the front door. I didn't release my breath until I heard it shut from behind him. Thanks, Dave. Anytime, kid. In my experience, threatening to call his mother is a decent deterrent for any overgrown man-baby. I chuckled, sensing the tension disperse. I'm gonna get back to bed now. Good luck tonight. And with that, he abruptly hung up. I sat for a moment, controlling my breathing in order to steady my palpitating heart before returning to my duties. I trudged into the kitchen and begrudgingly got to work, cleaning the mess of boxes and condiments that Stan had strewn throughout the area. I had just put the final ketchup bottle in its place when out of the corner of my eye I saw it. A figure was standing in the drive-thru window. I immediately tensed up, every muscle in my body freezing in place. It glared at me, yellow glowing eyes piercing the dark. It raised a gloved fist and knocked lightly on the thin glass. The sound freed me from my stupor. Rule number 2. I dashed to the counter and crouched behind it, hugging my knees to my chest. Ice flooded my veins as the knocking grew louder. The window shook in its frame as the light knock soon escalated to rapid pounding. I squeezed my eyes shut, terrified at the notion that the slim barrier to the outside world wouldn't hold. The constant noise assaulted my eardrums, crashing against them like thunder during a storm. The knocking crescendoed into a fever pitch of resounding slams. Just when I thought that I might lose my sanity, it stopped. I glanced up in the midst of the unsettling silence that I found myself in. It was gone, as if the entity had never appeared in the first place. I gradually stood and took my time to get my bearings. I hesitantly peeked around the corner at the drive-thru. Nothing, not so much as a scratch on the glass. I glanced down at my phone. 12:15 a.m., less than 2 hours to go. I could handle it, right? I began sweeping like Gary was beginning to ask me to do prior to receiving his unfortunate news. I was thankful for a break in the action. I didn't know how much more that I could take. Apparently, I could take a lot more, as I came to find out. A couple of college kids stumbled in trying to hide the fact that they were obviously stoned out of their minds and retrieved a pickup order. I watched as they clumsily staggered out the door. One of them held it politely for a small old lady, an old lady wearing a shawl. She didn't utter so much as a thank you, beelining up to the register with purpose. I was exhausted, up well past my normal operating hours, so I had completely forgotten about the rules. Big mistake. The woman glowered up at me, face obscured from view. Her head covering was black as well as the rest of her outfit, not unlike a ninja that you would see in a movie. The aura that she radiated frightened me, but not enough to release me from my sleepy haze. "Hello, can I help you?" I yawned, lazily covering my mouth. The woman didn't move a muscle. She scowled at me, yellow reptilian eyes piercing my psyche and sending my heart into overdrive. "Ma'am, would you like to order something?" Nothing. The longer we continued our staring match, the more sedated that I felt, and not just due to the lack of sleep. She had some sort of strange pull over me. I nearly nodded off, my mind wandering back to the instructions. Before I passed out, I murmured, "Where's Tony?" Suddenly, I was released from my trance and the woman was nowhere to be found. It was like she had simply vanished into thin air. My eyes widened. That was close, too close. I trudged to the sink and splashed some cool water in my face, and then poured myself a large cup of coffee. I knew that it would probably keep me up well past closing, but hey, if it helped me avoid another incident like that, I was all for it. I had just finished dumping the dustpan into the trash when I felt it. A peculiar sensation crept over me like bugs crawling on the back of my neck. I was being watched, but from where? I sensed it coming from the drive-thru. I whipped my head in its direction. Empty. I shifted to the dining area. No one was there. I grew lightheaded and panic began to surge through my system. A breeze swept past my ear and I swear that I could hear a soft, almost imperceptible voice whisper, "Blair." I bolted to the office, slamming the door shut as quickly as I could. What was that? I paced around the office like a caged animal, anxiously waiting for anything to happen. After what felt like an eternity, it began to dissipate without incident. I sat there for a moment, contemplating if this was really the right career path for me. Was every night like this? I was snapped back to reality by static emanating from my headset. I ripped it off until the noise stopped. A bumbling male voice had crackled through it. "Hey, is this place open?" He slurred, obviously under the influence. "Yeah, what do you want to order?" I was beginning to lose my cool. Between all these strange occurrences and the inebriated customers, my patience was wearing thin. "I'll have a fillet of fish meal." "Coming right up." I made my way back to the kitchen and began preparing his order. Who the heck comes to McDonald's at 1:30 in the morning for a freaking fillet of fish? I grumbled, purposefully dousing his sandwich in sauce. I served the man, hoping to be rid of him as soon as possible. Thanks. Hey, is that a kid at the counter?" I turned my head and sure enough, there he was. A mess of blonde tangles and deep blue eyes peered at me from the register. I sighed. Yeah, I'll take care of him. Have a good night. A child, unaccompanied in my restaurant. Just what I needed. I began to approach the counter when rule number 7 blared in my mind like a tornado siren. I froze mid-stride. Just ignore him, Blair. It's almost 2. You got this. I reassured myself, starting my closing duties early. That was easier said than done. The child began wailing, shrill, high-pitched screams reverberating off the walls. He ran into the kitchen area, allowing me a full view of his tiny frame. The boy couldn't have been older than 6. His Pac-Man t-shirt looked well outdated, and he was filthy, as if he hadn't showered in years. He began tugging on my shirt, begging for attention. "Please help me, lady, I can't find my mommy," he cried, tears streaming down his rosy cheeks. He was relentlessly pulling at my clothing. That was it, I had reached my breaking point. If this child, monster, demon, or whatever he was planned on killing me, he could go ahead and put me out of my misery. I was done. "Get out. Just screw off and leave me alone." He immediately quit sniffling and straightened up as if I had flipped a switch. Red tinged his striking pupils. Dread began sinking into my gut. A malicious grin blossomed across his lips. "You made the right choice," he growled as he headed toward the exit. "Weirdo kid," I mumbled, returning to cleaning. I finished up and waited around for 2 to hit, praying for a quiet, uneventful end to my first nightmare closing shift. Of course, my prayers went unanswered. I had a mere 3 minutes until I was supposed to clock out when I spotted it. A dark red, viscous liquid oozing from beneath the stove. Great, awesome, just what I needed. I filled up a mop bucket in the storage closet and began sopping up the mystery fluid. If it wasn't blood, you could have fooled me. A persistent copper taste attacked my tongue every time that I opened my mouth. I gagged, forcing vomit back down my throat. The stuff just wouldn't stop coming. On my 3rd bucketful of sloshing crimson, I finally started gaining an upper hand. I mopped fervently as blisters erupted across my hands from the friction of the wooden handle. All the not blood had been disposed of. I breathed a sigh of relief, careful to avoid splashing myself as I dumped the last of it down the drain. I had done it. Take that, I win. I cheered as if I had just claimed first prize at the Indy 500. My celebration was short-lived once I glanced down at my phone. 2:35 a.m. I bolted to the freezer, scooping up a couple bags of frozen patties. I slashed them open as quickly as I could, hoping in vain that I would be able to make it out in time. I dumped their contents on the grill and then turned to toss the packaging in the trash. My heart plummeted into my gut. A man stood before me. His black dead eyes matched that of the small mask encompassing the top half of his face. Wispy red hair sprouted from his floppy hat. A matching tattered black and white striped uniform framed his features, accompanied by a dingy red tie dotted with images of burgers. He grinned at me, jagged rotten teeth sending a chill undulating through my entire body. He spoke, a rough, gravelly voice shattering the tense silence. "Look, I know that you're new here, so I'll spare you this time. But if I ever catch you in here this late again, I won't think twice about increasing my calorie intake." His wicked smile exuded a malevolent hunger that still haunts my nightmares. A wet gray tongue wormed its way around his cracked and withered lips. I felt like a mouse about to be devoured by a rattlesnake. He scowled at me. "What are you still doing here? Get out!" I suddenly regained my mobility. I tore through the dining area and burst into the cool night air. The Hamburglar's soulless stare followed me into the vacant parking lot. I hurriedly locked him inside and raced to my car as a torrent of emotions flooded through me at once. Fear, anger, and confusion were all prominent on my desolate drive home. In the end, rage won out. I wasn't scheduled the next day, but I was determined to make that smug prick in charge at least give me some sort of explanation. I returned to the Golden Arches around 4 hours later, running on zero sleep and a whole pot of coffee. With fire in my eyes, I flung the door open and marched straight to Dave's office. Oh, yeah, it was great. Had his car repossessed and everything. Oh, hey Blitz, yeah, bye. For the last freaking time, it's Blair. B-L-A-I-R. Not Blitzen, not Blaziken, not Blakely. Blair. Dave furrowed his brow, mouth slightly agape. Yeah, Jim, I'll have to get back to you. He ended the call and furiously pocketed his phone. Do you even know who that was? I mean, why the heck do you think you can just storm into my office like this? No, you listen to me, Davy boy. I just had the worst night of my life. Every weird thing that could have happened, and you don't care one bit. I see you become acquainted with our more troublesome clientele. Yeah, I have, and I'm not dealing with that crap again. I quit. I hissed dramatically, slapping my hat onto his polished cedarwood desk before turning to walk out the door. Oh, wait, 25 an hour. I stopped dead in my tracks. I reluctantly faced him. A sly, toothy grin was stamped on his greasy face. I mulled it over. That was almost double what I was currently making. I could have my college paid for in no time. 27 and you've got a deal. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Blair. I accept, he said, extending his hand. I begrudgingly shook it, cringing as his sweaty palm gripped mine. I'm glad you were able to see reason. Welcome to the night crew. Can I take your order, sir? I asked the patron. Notepad in one hand, pen in the other, held steady. The creature looks me over. One of his eyes remains fixed on the menu before him. The other rolls with a wet squelch, rotating independently and hungrily, giving me the once-over. I'm used to it. Such is the duty of a human that works in a restaurant that serves primarily human flesh. The man licks his lips with a dark tongue, though of course he isn't a man, not really. Settled into a seat amongst peers and like-minded creatures, he can afford to relax a little. The colors of his suit start to fade, and it becomes disturbingly clear that he isn't wearing a suit at all. He has simply altered the colors and shades of his own crustily scaled skin, like a chameleon. His eyes have begun to bulge from their sockets, yellowing as they grow, pupils expanding and contracting. He grins, revealing the multiple layers of gray-green teeth behind his cracked lips, and a slippery black tongue, easily the length of my forearm, burst from his mouth and licks the side of his face with a disgusting and grotesque lack of shame. He is like many of the others, the ones I refer to privately as the cannibals. Though I suppose they technically aren't cannibals in the literal sense, as a cannibal is a human that eats another human, and these guys aren't human. If they ever were, they're certainly not anymore. But the patrons aren't even the worst part. As I said, I'm used to it. What I'm not used to, what I am yet to become comfortable with, even after a year of employment, and what I doubt I'll ever get used to, is the smell. The smell, you see, it's just, well, it's delicious. It's absolutely divine. Warm and steamy, like roasted pork. It makes one salivate. It only took a week or two of working here to turn myself into a fully fledged vegetarian. But I still have to ensure that I come to work with a full stomach before my shifts, or it will, without fail, start to rumble. The air just smells so good. and it sickens me. I am deeply disturbed by how tasty the smell of freshly cooked human flesh really is. I hate it, but there is nothing I can do. I've tried and tried to get out of my contract, but there is simply no way out. 12 months ago, I fell victim to a series of unlikely and unfortunate events. Events that saw me bound to this terrible restaurant. Bound by the contract. I am forced to uphold it utterly and totally, and the owner refuses to release me. And even if she did, what then? Would she carve me up and serve me to the guests? I like to think that she wouldn't. I would hope that she really does see me as a colleague of sorts, and that we could part ways good-naturedly. That she would allow me to just leave. But I'm not so sure. And that frightens me. The uncertainty. I hope you don't think that I'm a monster, by the way, for referring to the freaks that run this sickening place as colleagues. But I've learned a few things in life. You gotta look out for number one, because no one else will. As much as this restaurant horrifies and disgusts me, I have to look after my own best interests, and that includes keeping my colleagues on side, keeping my head down, and doing my bloody work. I come in when the rota demands, and one day my contract will end, and I hopefully will be let free. And if not, well, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Get a move on, Godfrey, warbles his female companion from across the table with a little belch. I'm starving here. She groans and I shoot her a glance at her stomach, distended and still shaded pale pink from her dress, visibly rumbles and shakes. One of the male's eyes had been fixed on me this entire time, but his second now joins it, flicking up to stare at me and only me. I do not flinch, and I try to keep my grimace subtle as I politely await his order. What would you recommend, waiter? The thing asked me, his tongue lolling from side to side as he does so. I smile pleasantly, though it does not reach my eyes. The steak is very good, sir, though they do tend to go a little heavy on the juices. I would suggest asking for only a light drizzle. Splendid, he mutters, his lips peeling back to reveal all 4 layers of broken teeth. I'll have that then, please. Rare. And for you, madam, I ask, turning to his companion. Try not to look at the monster on the table behind her, tearing into his meal like a rabid dog. Blood and spittle flying like thick rain and spraying out over the tablecloth. She grunts and scratches her chin with a 4-fingered hand. One eye reads the menu as her other rolls, giddily staring around the room. It leaks a little with pus, and her tongue shoots out to lick it clean, before retracting messily behind her teeth. I clench my jaw. I'll have the blade loin, and a side of ribs. I write down her order. These small ribs, please, she mutters, her lips crackling and peeling back into a grin. Certainly, madam, I reply, stone-faced. I'll get these orders to the chefs and I'll bring it all out as soon as it's ready. I hope you enjoy your evening. I turn and head to the kitchen. I can feel their eyes bore hungrily into my back as I take my leave. Would these freaks try to eat me if it weren't for the owner? Try to tear me limb from limb between the tables? I'm sure that a great many of them probably would. It's an unsettling feeling, to say the least, but the owners keep the patrons in line. I'm not sure if it's so much of a humanitarian solidarity, but rather more like a practical, employee maintenance initiative. They do struggle for staff here. I stake my way through the maze of tables, avoiding the greedy, roaming eyes of the guests and pretending that I don't feel and or care about their skin-crawling little caresses as I pass them by. I don't know if they think that they're being subtle, or if they simply don't care, but it disgusts me. I can bring issues to the owner and she'll probably kick the offender out right then and there. provided they aren't too high profile. But it happens so much that it's not worth mentioning. What's the point? Just keep your head down, don't cause a fuss, and do your work. The ripe and heavy smells of cooking flesh redouble as I push through the doors into the kitchen. I feel the sweat start to pinprick across my skin at once. One of the waitresses passes me by and back out through the doors, carrying 2 plates of steaming pink-red meat in her hands. She shoots me a glance with all 3 of her amber-tinted eyes, but doesn't smile. They're civil to me, the other waiters and waitresses. Civil, but not kind. I don't really give a crap, to be honest. I have no interest in being their friend. No need to become too prominent on anyone's radar. Just as long as they respect me enough to not cause or seek out any issues. These chefs, however, are outright hostile. Order up, I say in a loud but dispassionate voice, holding out the order slip. The nearest chef reaches around the counter and snatches it in a gnarled hand, grunting and squinting and leaking from his pores as he reads through. I can't frickin' read a word of this. Weren't you never taught to write, boy? Blade loin, a side of small ribs, and a steak. Rare, light drizzle. Light drizzle? The chef barks, looking up at me, pupils narrowing rapidly. He slams the severed, bloody arm he's holding down onto the counter with a splat and leans across to look at me. I suppress a gag. You've been making these crap suggestions to the customers again, meatbag. The drizzle's the best part. I'm just telling you what they ordered, Bert. I reply levelly, holding his gaze. And you know what? He's got good taste. There is always too much drizzle. You prick, Bert shouts at me, but stuffs the order into the slot and grabs the arm, muttering and swearing to himself and the others as he turns back to the stoves. The best tactic when it comes to these chefs is to just not take anything, I found. My talkback might irritate them, but weakness is worse. They despise it. The kid's right, you know, Bert. Comes a gruff voice from the other side of the kitchen. A taller chef, round-bellied and gray-scaled, bald and jowled. You risk ruining another good dish with your obsession with that frickin' sauce. Oh, shut it, Grummy, Bert replies. Just 'cause you're older, don't make you any wiser, you dummy. Grummy snorts with laughter as he flips the contents of his pan. It looks like a series of dried and crusted human ears, but I can't be sure. He winks at me and points to the bloodied plate on the side. That one's ready to go out, John. Table 12. Right, cheers, Grummy. I grab the plate, wincing with the heat but holding it steady nonetheless. Trying not to focus too carefully on the actual food, reading the note instead for details of the meal's contents. Grum is the only one in the kitchen who's actually decent to me. I'm not sure why. The cynic in me half believes that he's trying to groom me, biding his time for the perfect opportunity to cut me down and carve me up. But then again, perhaps not. I vouched for him once at an important juncture when one of the other chefs kept screwing up the orders. Back in my first month of employment, I was witness to a great deal of kitchen chaos and inter-staff fighting. The head chef at the time was losing his wits and pinning all the blame for his messed up orders on Grummy, and everyone believed him. Too wrapped up in their own stuff to see what was going on for themselves. They just put their misguided faith in the authority. But I saw. I always see. I see things that others don't, even with those roaming eyes of theirs. And so I vouched for him, for Grummy. I tried to keep it on the down low and only told the owner. But one thing led to the next and the head chef was quickly fired. Grummy won back his respect and he recently earned the title of head chef himself. Information, regardless of its source, has a tendency to leak through the cracks and trickle down. And Grummy became much nicer to me after that. I suspect that he found out where his support came from, one way or another. I carried the order out to table 12. "Waiter!" calls a woman from one of the tables to my left. I shoot her a glance as I pass her by. Her jaw protrudes out to the sides at awkward angles and cracks as she speaks. Red goo leaks from her lips. "We need some extra sides over here." "I'll be right with you, madam. Apologies." Yes, I think to myself, my apologies for doing my job, you disgusting creature. I approach table 12. A man with fly-like eyes and a mouth bordered by scorpion fangs rubs all four of his hands together excitedly. "The mashed liver, sir," I announce as I place the plate down in front of him. "Is there anything else I can—" But before I'm able to finish, the man has shoved his face into the food. I pull back as he gnaws and tears at it with feverish desperation, spraying the contents across the table and up and over my uniform. It splatters up to my chest. I am beset by a powerful waft of the food and my complexion pales. The man turns to me. His eyes quiver and a low buzzing rumbles in his throat. He stops eating, grunting as he does so, staring right at me, poised and tensed. And I find myself suddenly very afraid. I want to take a step back. I want to run the heck away. But I am overcome with a terror that, to do so, risks shattering the thin ice upon which this moment rests. My gut tells me that something is wrong. Something is about to happen. Images of the monster lunging right at me, springing from his chair and burying his fangs into my throat and tearing it open like wet tissue paper, race like fire through my head. Is this it? Is this how it ends? No build-up, no ceremony. Just one rabid customer too many. One customer who couldn't control his urges, despite the power of the threats laid down by the owner, the clear warnings on the signs. Is this it? There's a tray on a nearby table, one in the process of being cleared away. Maybe I should grab the tray, use it as a kind of makeshift shield. But the moment passes. The tension breaks. I stumble back in alarm. Instead of attacking me, however, the creature doubles over. He stands, clutching at his neck. He screeches, a noise which is quickly cut off by a gurgling and a spluttering in his throat. I stare at him for a second or two in confusion. Some of the other nearby patrons have turned to look as well. The man's distress grows. He grabs me by the collar, and then releases me almost instantly. He slams his many fists down against the table. He knocks over his chair and stumbles into the next table over. Everyone is looking now, staring at the commotion. And I realize, is he choking? After another second or two, I think that perhaps he is. What would you do in this situation, I wonder? I weigh my options. Everyone's gaze is focused on the creature, but it'll become apparent quite quickly who the closest employee was at the time of the incident. It's possible that there are staff eyes on me right now. Don't make a big deal of it, John, but do what needs to be done. Right. I quickly step behind the monstrous man. I grab a hold of the cuff of his shirt to stop him from flailing, though it becomes immediately clear that I have grabbed nothing but a roll of scaled flesh, and start slamming the heel of my hand in between his shoulder blades. "What the devil are you doing?" shouts a man from the next table. "Saving his life, sir," I reply back through grunts, as I bring my hand down hard for the 5th time. Still, the creature chokes, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he wheezes. Very well, here goes nothing, I think to myself as I step forward and reach both arms around him. Time to find out if the Heimlich maneuver works on these things. I ball up one of my fists against the place that I presume his solar plexus to be, and I bring the palm of my other hand down and onto it, hard with the force of a punch. And a chunk of red-purple meat flies from the creature's mouth. I actually see it soar through the air and splatter against a bottle of wine a few tables down. The man staggers and wheezes, filling his lungs with great bouts of air. It's difficult to gauge expression on that monstrous face of his, but he turns to me, and if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that he looked rather bewildered, to be frank. You saved me," he sputters, but I just lead him back to his seat, ignoring the round of applause that now rolls across the restaurant floor. A bizarre situation indeed. I just make sure that he is alright and still reeling from the palpitations caused by my first suspicion. Make a hasty escape to the storeroom as professionally as I can, avoiding eye contact with all as I do so. I wonder as I walk whether or not I had acted correctly, whether my moves were wise, whether the creature was worth saving. You didn't do it for him. You did it for you. It was easier to do something than to do nothing. But even now, even after saving one of their own, I still feel their hungry glances. I still shiver at their clammy touches, this time under the guise of congratulations. I still see them lick their lips and sweat as I pass them by. I despise them. John. I have rounded the corner and left the main lobby of the restaurant. The storeroom sits at the end of the corridor, and at the opposite end is the room that Helia uses as her office. That's her name, the owner, Helia. I look up at the sound of her voice. I saw what you did there, John. Don't think I didn't see. For some reason, the first emotion that passes through me is fear, but I try to force it down. Why should I be afraid? I didn't do anything wrong, did I? It's fascinating how even the mere tone of an authority figure can make you doubt yourself. Yes, I reply as coolly as possible, doing my best to maintain a neutral expression. Yes, she repeats, chuckling, her chin's wobbling as she does so. You saved our customer's life. You're a hero. I work in a restaurant that serves my fellow man up on a platter. I'm not a hero, I'm a traitor. Thanks, I reply. Here, take these, and go fetch me another leg from the freezer and then get yourself home. My heart leaps. Could it be? She wouldn't, would she? Is she going to release me from my contract? Take the rest of the day off. You've earned it. We can manage here for tonight, she says. My pulse slows back down. The rest of the day. Right, of course. I nod. Thank you, Helia. And I reach out a hand to catch the keys as she tosses them to me. And then she turns and retreats back into her office. I look down at my hand. The keys. She's never trusted me with the keys before. Could this be some kind of test? These will allow me access to the freezers. I've never been down there. It's usually one of these chefs that go down, or on a rare occasion, one of the other waiters or waitresses. But never me. Never the human. I never settled on a reason as to why. And to be honest, I never really cared. I was grateful for not having to travel down to the freezers, the place the meat is held and kept cool and fresh. Grateful for the privilege of keeping the rooms out of sight and out of mind. But now it seems I am going to go down after all, and the meaning behind her request suddenly registers. Go fetch me another leg from the freezer. Another leg. My stomach turns at the thought. Seeing the food is one thing, the fleeting glimpses of these chefs' preparation techniques is another, but to actually locate and carry the parts up to the kitchen myself. Does she see this as a reward, as an increase of responsibility, or is this some kind of sick joke? I don't know how these things work, I really don't, but I want to get out of here and go home, if only for the night. Do your job, John, and keep your colleagues on side, and go home. And so I grit my teeth, I steel my stomach and I head off through the corridors, through the locked door at the back of the restaurant and down the stairs into the bluish, frosty gloom, my breath clouding by my mouth. I shiver as I descend, down into the dark. I step heavily onto the floor and start to stroll through the length of this new corridor. A leg. The kitchen needs a leg. I push through the nearest door and come to a sudden stop. And I realize that I shouldn't have come down here. I should have refused her offer. I should have taken the keys back to her office. I should have passed the buck to somebody else. All of these thoughts and more flood to the forefront as I stare in horror at the pieces of humans that are hooked and packaged around the room. Arms, legs, chunks of unidentifiable flesh, a torso hooked and stripped of limbs. A bucket of hands sits on the ground to my immediate right. And in the corner are a pile of heads. I don't need to look directly at them. I can tell. I can see. I can see their wide and staring eyes, lifeless and empty. I stagger back and out of the room, stumbling and tripping down to the ground with a loud thud. Jesus Christ, I shout. Screw this terrible place. I sit myself up against the wall, running my hands through my hair as the sweat freezes against my back, collecting my breath. I'll go back up. I'll pass the keys to another employee. Tell them that Helia herself had requested that they retrieve the leg, because I'm sure as heck not doing it. I'm not spending another unnecessary second in this nightmare basement. I may be bound to employment, but Helia can't force me to come down here. She can't. She can't. My thoughts are interrupted by a voice, soft and weak, from a little further down the corridor. Hello? I turn and stare, heart pounding once again. Hello? It comes for a second time. It's high-pitched. It sounds like the voice of a little girl. Please, she whimpers. Is anyone there? Oh God. There's someone down here. Someone else. Someone alive. I scramble to my feet and stare down the corridor to the source of the voice. My breath steams in the cold and blue-tinged air. It could just be a prank, John. A fellow employee playing a sick joke. Or something worse. A test. A trap. I shoot a glance behind, back to the stairs that lead up and out into the restaurant. Remember, John, you've got to look out for number one. Self-preservation is key. Don't put yourself at risk. My primary thought process is interrupted by another. What? You're not even going to look. You can afford to take a look, John. There's time. Go and see. I shiver and run a hand through my hair. I could go and look. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I creep down the corridor and deeper into the gloom, passing by more heavy doors, some with circular little glass windows built into them. I don't look directly through, but in the corner of my eye I see more than enough of the twisted and sickening horrors that lie beyond. The stuck and hooked slabs of meat, hanging limbs, and worse. Ugh. I round a corner at the corridor's far end. It turns off at a right angle and goes on for another couple of meters, and then comes to an abrupt stop. There are a few more doors around there, all sealed tight. I stay still for a moment, head cocked, heart pounding, and listen. A part of me, a cowardly part, hopes that I don't hear anything else, that there is nothing to be done here. I can just head back up to the restaurant, relatively guilt-free, and go the hell home. But that is not what happens. Please, comes the voice, weaker this time, but quite clear enough, even muffled behind the door as it is. I step closer and try to look through the circular pane, but the glass has frosted, and I see nothing but blurry shapes in the room beyond. I try the handle, locked tight. A ticking hand in my watch seems disproportionately loud. I lean back around the corner and I shoot another glance up to the stairs. This goes against every instinct of self-preservation I have, but I can't help it. I'm only human. I start cycling through the keys in the ring, trying each one in the icy lock. The first one fails, as does the second. Footsteps creak above me as someone makes their way across the ground floor. Key number 3. Let's try it. My hand shakes as I bring it to the lock, fumbling as I try to fit the key inside, succeeding. I successfully turn it around in an arc. The door rocks with a loud clunk, and I grab the handle, hauling it open. An icy cloud billows out and I curse as it washes over my exposed skin. It takes a second to disperse, and when it does, I see her. She can't be more than 7 or 8, knees drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped tight around her shoulders. She sits there, shivering violently in the corner of the room. Lines had been drawn in marker at various intervals across her body, around her arms, her sides, her legs. She stares up at me with wide and frightened eyes, and I stare back. To her right, all across these shelves are carved up pieces of a human body, encased in tight, translucent plastic wrapping, scarlet stained. We remain fixed in place for a moment, her and I. "Get out, John," screams the voice inside my head. "She's the only living thing down here. She's being saved for a special occasion, and they will notice if she is missing. Leave her here." I reach behind my back and untie the deep red canvas apron that forms the key piece of my uniform. I crouch down and I wrap it around her. At the slightest gesture of concern, she breaks and rushes forward, clinging tight to my arm and shuddering, crying silent tears that stream down her face. "They'll replace her with you. How can you possibly think you can save her, John?" My sense of rationality screams at me as I hurriedly lead her down the corridor and back towards the stairs. "What can you possibly do? There's no way you can get her out of here unscathed. There is just no way. You have to look out for number 1. This will be your undoing." "It's okay," I mutter to the girl. "It's okay. I'm going to get you out, you hear me? I'm going to get you out of here. But you have to do exactly as I say, okay?" No response. I stop halfway up the stairs and squat down, grabbing her tight by the shoulders and looking into her eyes. "Okay." She nods quickly, tears still flowing in silent rivers. "Right, okay. We can do this. We can do this." I take a deep breath as I grab a hold of the freezer door's heavy handle, the one that will return us into the back of the restaurant. Locked. No. Oh no. "Crap!" I blurt out, releasing the girl's hand and using both to pull on the handle. She clings instead to my leg. No. So it was a trap then. It was a trap all along. This is it. This is the end. Unless it's just the cold, I think out loud. Is it frozen? I shoot the girl a glance and she doesn't reply. I grunt and grip tightly on the handle, veins bulging in my forearms as I pull it down. And with a crack and a little burst of frost, the door swings open. Relief floods through me. It'll be short-lived, but for now, it's most welcome. I peer out and I look both ways. Empty. I encourage the girl to follow and she does so. I lock the freezer door tight behind us and I think through my admittedly limited options as quickly as I can. There are 2 ways out of this place. The fire exit at the back, and the main doors at the front. None of the windows will open wide enough to get her out. The fire exit might be alarmed, and to get to it, you have to pass through the kitchen. I swallow. Main entrance it is. I look down at the girl. She looks back up at me as she fumbles with the straps of the apron, wrapped it tightly around herself. She's so small. Could I hide her in something? I rack my brains. There are boxes in the storeroom that are used for cutting off trash. She'd probably fit in one of those. but they'll notice she's missing. They'll know it was you, John. Unless... Right, follow me, come on, trust me. Everything's going to be okay. My voice shakes as I speak. I imagine that she can hear the fear, but she follows nonetheless. We dart back through the corridors, and the sounds and smells of the main restaurant grow stronger and closer. The final stretch of corridor is a short one, and once we enter into it, we will be caught in a direct line sight with many of the closest tables. I peer around the edge. To the left, at the far end, I see patrons held in the thralls of their meals, grunting and stuffing their faces with the kitchen's finest works, distending their jaws and growling, perhaps unconsciously, as they tear the chunks of steamy flesh right off the bone. Ahead and just off to the right is the door to the men's bathroom. "Stay here," I whisper to the girl. She looks like she's about to panic. "I'll be right back, just give me a few seconds, I promise." She anxiously releases her grip, and with one more glance, I stroll as nonchalantly as I can across the corridor and push through the door to the bathroom. A quick look around confirms that it is empty, and I return at once to the girl. I take her hand. "Stay on this side of me, keep pace, don't make a sound, okay?" She nods. I glance once again around the corner. No one is noticed and no one is coming. Spittle and saliva flies from the cracked and peeled lips of the closest patron, but she isn't looking this way. She's sitting at an angle. I steel myself. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. We stride as one across the corridor. She has to walk a little quicker to keep up, and I hear her ragged breaths alongside me. To my ears, they sound dangerously loud. I reach out for the bathroom door, eyes ahead, and I push through. I breathe. I take her to the cubicle furthest from the door and I draw her inside. "You need to stay here, okay? Hide up in here on the toilet. Keep your feet up and stay totally silent. I will come back for you, I promise. I won't be long. Just don't move, okay?" She looks scared at the prospect of being left here alone. She shakes her head. I bring my face closer to hers. I hiss with greater desperation now. "They are going to hurt you. You know this, don't you? Unless I can get you out of here, they're going to hurt you a lot. So please, please, stay here, stay silent, and I'll be back. I promise." The girl says nothing, but tentatively she releases her grip and huddles herself up on top of the toilet. "I'll be back. Lock the door, okay? Don't open it for anyone but me." And with that, I depart. I hurry back to the bathroom door, pausing to ensure that the girl does as I asked. I see her feet below the stall door. I hear the lock click, and I see her feet disappear again. She'll be okay. I return into the restaurant, pulse racing. "All right, John, next steps. You're committed now. Don't screw this up." I stride down the edge of the restaurant, trying to keep in the shadows but still unavoidably catching the attention of the more shameless of the customers. I see them drag those disgusting gray-black tongues across their blood-stained mouth. I see their rolling eyes following my movements. I feel their vile and sticky caresses against my elbows as I push into one of these side rooms. The higher-class diners tend to eat in here. It's less noisy. I see one of my fellow employees, the waitress from earlier. All three eyes are fixed on a customer as she takes his order. I bide my time, waiting. And when she's done, I alter my course and intercept her before she can return to the kitchen. Garen, hey." She looks up at me. I take her scaled wrist in my hand and push the keys into them before she has a chance to question me or refuse. She grimaces. One eye looks down at her hand and the other two remain fixed on me. I don't think that we've ever made intentional physical contact before. Her skin around the arms is rough and it's not quite scaled, but still harder than it should be. "Why are your hands so cold?" she asks. "Humans are warm-blooded, aren't they not?" I pause. Just been outside. A smoke break. Since when do you smoke? Just started. It's stressful working here. For obvious reasons. Why are you giving me these, John? She asks. Mahalia wants you down in the freezer. The kitchen needs an arm. Why don't you go down? I shrug. I'm human, ain't I? I've never been down there before. I don't know where anything is. She rolls all three of her eyes. Fine, take this to the kitchen for me then. She pauses. And where's your apron? I take the order slip from her free hand. My shift's over for the day. I'm on my way home, thanks. I turn in straight away before she can ask me any more questions. I realized that my fist had been clenched against the side of my leg and stretched my fingers, encouraging the blood flow. Back through the restaurant, the tension is palpable. I feel it like a tangible field, one that could shatter at any moment. Stay calm, John. Stay calm. I push past the doors and into the uncomfortable warmth of the kitchen. Mortar up, I say above the sizzle of the cookers and hold the slip across the counter. Bert reaches out and snatches it with an angry mutter. Freaking meatbag. I can't read a single word of this stuff. I'm already backing away, returning to the doors. Bert, I didn't even write that one. I don't know what it says. He stared at me incredulously, snarling. He bares his row of gray-green teeth and spits onto the counter. You what, boy? What are you doing swapping orders for? You trying to make my life as difficult as possible, you dumb sack of flesh. Some of the other chefs have glanced over. They paused their jobs, knives and other such fearsome apparatus in their hands. The general bustle of the kitchen slows somewhat. I swallow. An unpleasant experience with my death-dry throat. I step back up to the counter. Look, just hand it over to me and let me see. Big mistake, he barks, shoving the now crumpled and sweat-stained note back into my hand. To the guy's credit, it is actually rather difficult to read. It's, they want the steak, medium rare, with the leg daubless on the side. Me grunts as he snatches the note back and stuffs it into the order slot. The others have returned to their duties. The bustle resumes, and I get the heck out. I'm just hoping and praying that I don't bump into Helia. My movements will be far harder to explain to her, and I can't leave the girl in the bathroom. She needs me. I head right across the restaurant, abandoning the shadowy edge for the more direct but less comfortable route through the tables to the corridor that will lead me to the storeroom. Waiter, someone calls. Waiter. I ignore them. For all they know, I have other duties to attend to. In a sense, I do. In the stockroom, I grab myself a new apron and hastily slip it over my neck and fasten it around my waist. I root through the piles of cardboard and pick up a large cardboard box still in one piece, and one that I'm hoping will be strong enough to hold the weight of the girl inside without collapsing. It was a smart enough plan in my head, but now that I'm looking at it, can I really carry the girl in this box? What if she's just too heavy and breaks out through the bottom? I run my hands through my hair and look around the storeroom. There's nothing else in here that will be any use to me. I don't have much of a choice. The box it is. I grab the thing and empty it of the papers that are strewn about inside, carrying it back through the storeroom door. I can avoid going through the main restaurant now, and instead head through the accompanied side corridor in my return to the bathroom. I pass by these series of disturbing pictures to which I become accustomed to over my many long months in employment. A framed portrait of a disgusting monster, less humanoid than most. It could well be an old relative of Helia's. His eyes appear to follow my movements. An oil canvas painting, one that depicts a barren field beneath the blood red of an evening sky. A pile of corpses sits rotting in the background, ever so slightly out of immediate focus. A blown-up, black and white photograph of a similar restaurant's opening. At least, I've assumed it to be a different restaurant. It must be. The building is exactly the same, but I don't recognize the surrounding location. I join back up to the hallway with the bathrooms. I appreciate that I made it sound like there are a labyrinth of winding corridors and halls that adjoin this restaurant, but honestly, there aren't actually a great deal. The freezer was larger than I had expected it to be, admittedly, but it has the luxury of having an entire floor to itself. If I meet anyone coming the opposite way down one of these corridors, then I'll have to hold the box above my head to allow them to pass, something that I doubt I'll be able to do even if I have the girl inside. I use my foot to push through into the men's bathroom. I come to a stop and suck some air through my teeth as I do so. All 3 stalls are occupied. A man with cracked horns and bulging, shadowed sacks beneath his eyes raps irritably on the door of the furthest stall, the one that hides the girl. "Hello, is anyone in there?" he grunts, crouching slightly to try and peer beneath the door. "Sir," I stammer, trying to keep my voice as level as I can. "That one's out of order, I'm afraid. You might just have to wait for one of the others to open up." He eyes me greedily, sucking a long strand of saliva back into his mouth. He mutters, but says no more and moves away, waiting by the second of the doors instead. There is an uncomfortable silence as we both stand still in the bathroom, not that far apart, waiting. And then the toilet flushes and another of the cannibals pushes out from his stall. The man with the horns take his place, shutting the door behind him as its former occupant washes up and pushes past it out into the restaurant. Not before a quick snuff of my immediate air as he passes me by, however. I shiver in disgust and quietly step to the furthest stall. I kneel down and poke my head beneath the door, meeting the gaze of the little girl, huddled and shaking and white with terror. "Let me in," I mouth, and after a beat, she does so, tentatively stepping onto the ground and reaching for the lock as I pull back, pushing through the door and quickly shutting it closed again behind me. "You're going to have to get into the box," I whisper, setting it on the ground. There's not a great deal of space in here, so I shuffle to the side, back pressed up against the cubicle's wall. She stares at it, and then back at me, and I see for a moment the plan through her eyes. Yes, I know it's kind of stupid. This goes against every instinct I have. Well, not quite every instinct. My sense of humanity shines bright, but the others, the ones that have thus far kept me alive, are resentful and angry. "I know," I whisper, "but please, I need you to get out of here before they realize you're missing. So please, just get in." She stares at me. I can see the gears turning in her head. Her eyes are red and raw, but she has stopped crying, and she clambers carefully into the box. "Stay quiet, don't move. I'll get you out." I close the lid. I stretch my back. I turn behind me and unlock the door in preparation. Then, when I think the bathroom is clear, I squat down and grab the box, tilting it upwards, sliding both my hands beneath. Christ. The girl, of course, isn't very heavy, but the size and shape of the box means that a disproportionate amount of weight is being supported by my forearms. I grunt with a strain as I rise to a stand, adjusting the positions of my arms as best I can. I use my feet to open the door and stride back through the bathroom, pushing into the corridor and returning the way that I came, through the hallway in the back. A risk, to be sure, if I bump into anyone coming the opposite way, but safer than taking it through the actual main lobby of the restaurant. I won't be able to avoid it entirely, however. The corridor leads past the storeroom and back into the main room. A little closer to the entrance, definitely, but still a fair distance away. Go, just go for it. Look ahead and get to the doors. And my heart pounds as I walk, awkwardly and at an angle so as to see around the box, but speedy enough, I hope. Muscle straining, step by step. Hey! Oh God, don't panic. I'm making my way down the edge of the restaurant, down the side around the far table. A little further ahead and that's it. The entrance doors. The escape. Hey, waiter! I see movement in the corner of my eye. A patron has risen to their feet at their table. I shoot over a glance and see that it is the man from before, with the scorpion fangs, the fly-like glitterball eyes, and the 4 arms. The one that I had saved from choking. He waves at me, using one of his hands to wipe the gore from his mouth, flicking the residue down onto the tablecloth and over his empty plate. A part of me just wants to run, to make a break for it. It's not like anyone would stop me. But is the box sturdy enough? Or would the girl fall through? And regardless, my behavior would be noticed and noted. And I'm on thin ice as it is. But irregular behavior plus a missing girl equals guilty. And I don't know what would happen to me if I'm judged as such. Game over, I guess. "That's the guy that saved me. Get this man a raise," the patron calls, looking over his shoulder as he moves past his fellow customers and ambles towards me. I follow his gaze. He's looking right at Helia, stood with her arms folded at a nearby table. "No." I lower the box at once, driving it to the floor a little rougher than I would have liked, but eager to get it out of Helia's direct line of sight. It thuds to the ground between my legs and the closest table. One of the creatures sat at it peers over the side to look at the box with curiosity. Her nostrils flared. The scorpion man reaches me and wraps 2 of his arms around my shoulder. He laughs, a terrible, guttural sound with the smell of his meal hot in his breath. One of his feet kicks carelessly up against the box, but he pays it no mind. Another round of applause starts to roll around the restaurant floor as all the patrons look my way once again. Helia is making her way over. My heart hammers in my chest. I glance feverishly down to the box. "Don't move. I will its occupant. Please, please, don't draw any attention." "This was the waiter that I was telling you about." The man chortles to Helia as she approaches our position. "He deserves a reward or something, is all I'm saying." "Yes," Helia replies, her chin's wobbling. "Quite right, sir, quite right. I was actually witness to the incident myself." She's just under 2 meters away now, making her way around the table towards us. "What are you still doing here, John?" she asks. "I thought you would have made your way home by now." The applause dies down, and the customers turn back to their tables. The thick, sticky stench of the atmosphere weighs heavily down upon us all. The conversation and the munching and grinding of meals continues across the restaurant floor. But still, she approaches. I can't speak, I can't think. There is no moisture in my mouth, and my tongue sticks to its roof. She comes to a stop by the box. The scorpion man has written something on a note and stuffed it into my front pocket, with a heavy pat on the back. A contact number perhaps, a tip, or his name, I have no idea. I don't really care. I don't listen as he shares some final words with Helia. I don't watch him as he departs. I stare instead at my boss as she regards the box with curiosity. "What have you got there, John?" she asks, as time slows right down. I fumble for words. I was just trash. I was just finishing up. Thought I would take the trash with me on my way out. I swallow, and Helia bends down to open the box's lid. I stare in horror as Helia pulls open the cardboard lid of the box, to reveal nothing. The box is empty. One of these sides has become partially disconnected from the whole, and a strip of the deep red carpet is visible from the inside. My eyes dart to the tablecloth beside it. It reaches down almost to the floor, and it rustles. I step to the side at once, drawing Helia's gaze away. "This is just an empty box," she asks, looking up at me. Yeah, exactly. It's just taking up space in the storeroom, so I thought I would get rid of it." "No, we can use this, take it back. And then seriously, get yourself home, okay? You've earned it." I forced a half smile. "Right. And do you have that limb I asked for, by the way? And the keys to the freezer?" Oh, no, I bumped into a Garen on the way there, and she knows the layout better than me, where everything is and such, so she offered to go down instead. Thought that she might as well. She said she would take it straight to the kitchen. There is a tense pause. One of our patrons laughed at something on the opposite side of the restaurant. The sound is low and wet. Helia shrugs. All right. She pointed the box as she turns to take her leave, and I nod in response. And we're in the clear. For now. I allow myself a breath and then squat down to pick it up. I'll be back for you, I mutter when my face is beside the tablecloth. Stay here. And I dutifully carry the box back to the storeroom, already racking my brain for a new plan as I do so. My back is slick with sweat and my shirt sticks uncomfortably to my shoulders. I try not to think about either of the table's occupants kicking suddenly out and striking the cowering girl that hides below. What the hell has gotten into you, John? You'll be lucky if you ever make it out of here alive, let alone with the girl too. I could just leave. I could just walk out and hope that she has the wits to make her own escape. I could choose to forget all about her. I couldn't yet. I can't. I run my hands through my hair. The game is still in play. I need an excuse to stay. I take one of the empty trays from the nearest shelf and return into the restaurant. I really need a glass of water or something. I'm starting to feel lightheaded as hell. The couple at the table that hides the girl are, thankfully, nearly finished. I head over, hanging back until the second that the woman has pushed the final chunk of red-brown meat into her mouth. Her tongue slithers out and licks her finger clean, along with her wrist and the lower half of her forearm. You finished up? I ask, hastily clearing away the items on the table before I can get a response. Yes, warbles the man, rubbing his belly. The colors of his suit fade steadily in and out across his semi-scaled skin. Delightful feast. He hungrily drinks me in as he speaks. Anything else I can get for you? I ask as required, silently praying for a no. No, the man says, looking at his companion. I think we're done here. That'll be all. Right, I reply. I realize that I may have been a little hasty with my cleanup, and I slow down significantly, pausing, waiting, hovering by the table to see if the disgusting creatures are going to get up and leave. But instead, they decide to enter into a conversation. Table items and empty plates in hand, and hovering suspiciously as I am, I have no real choice but to return the items to the kitchen. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing now. Maybe I could hide perhaps, or insist that I want to stay. Help the girl get away when the restaurant is less busy. She's so close to the exit. For now though, if the cannibals currently sitting at her table would kindly get out, that would be a good start. I push through into the kitchen, and I'm hit by the wave of sticky warmth. A large chunk of unidentifiable meat rotates slowly over the grill, sizzling and dripping heavy globules of grease as it turns. And there stands Garen, the waitress, holding a plastic, shrink-wrapped arm, arguing with Bert the chef. What the heck is this? We need a leg, not a bloody arm, you idiot. He bellows over the counter and into her face. Crap, that's right, the kitchen needed a leg. What did I ask Garen to retrieve from the freezer? Did I ask her to get a leg or an arm? Crap, I definitely asked her to get an arm. There's a joke in there somewhere. My mind races. You idiot, John. You've messed this whole operation right up, haven't you? What are you going to do now? I stand there in the doorway like a moron, tray in hand. The two engaged in the argument have not yet noticed my presence. Look, says the waitress, her three eyes narrowed in defiance. I'm just following orders. John said, since when did you take orders from that meatbag? You know, there's really no need for you to swear so much, Bert. You're not impressing anyone. For heck's sake, he roars. If you want something done, you gotta... The veins in the chef's arm bulge as he grinds his teeth, tearing off his apron and striding around the counter, snatching the keys in the plastic-wrapped severed arm from Garen's hand as he does so. I step quickly to the side and avoid his gaze as he shoves past me, muttering angrily under his breath. I put the tray on the side, ready to be sorted and cleaned, and Garen makes eye contact with me. She throws out her arms in exasperation. "What the heck, John?" she says. She looks pretty upset. I wince and mouth a sorry to her. She shakes her head, but to my great relief, says nothing further. "Don't mind, Bert," says Grummy, putting a heavy hand on the waitress's shoulder. "Actually, Grummy, there was one other thing, down in the freezer." She glances around and then pauses, as if unsure as to whether it's wise to share her information, but she beckons him closer. She mutters something into his ear, and that all too familiar fear makes a swift and unwelcome return to my gut. Oh God, did she see? Did she notice the missing girl already? Did you even remember to relock the room that you found her in, John? I'm not so sure if I did. Grummy's eyes meet mine, and I feel the color drain from my face. It's almost like I can see the cogs and gears turning in his head. There's a long and strained pause. The sounds of clattering pots and pans reverberate through the pillars of steam all around. The chef straightens. "John," he calls from across the kitchen. Another pause. "Yes, Grummy," I reply. He nods to a dish at the end of the counter. "Helia might have dismissed you, but this is my kitchen. Take this order out, and then you're done for the evening. Table 20. Blood rushes in my ears as I step closer, heart hammering, avoiding his gaze as I take the plate in hand, along with the order slip. Table 20. But Grummy, this says, "Table 20, John." Grummy growls, and I nod, carrying it out and into the restaurant without another word. Table 20 it is. I've never been good under pressure. As you probably noticed, this isn't the way that I do things. I do what I'm told as neutrally and as dispassionately, but not disrespectfully as possible. Staying boring, keeping under the radar. It's worked fantastically so far. And today, well, today might as well have screwed all that up. Save the girl. You have to save the girl. You told her to stay put under the table and she trusts you. You can't abandon her, you won't. You have to save the girl. I try not to think about what my shift is going to be like tomorrow. If I even make it to tomorrow, that is. I can't bear it. What's the best case scenario for you here, John? The girl gets away. You get home safely, and what? No one notices she's even missing. It's never mentioned. I snake my way through the restaurant to table 20. It doesn't take long. It's right at the back of the room, by the same wall that holds the kitchen doors. I do my best to hold off the wave of impending panic. Of course they'll notice she's missing. They'll absolutely notice. It looks like they already have noticed. But no one knows you were down there. Garen will get the blame. She's the one that went down. Grummy suspects though, doesn't he, John? You saw it in his eyes. He's got his suspicions already. Are suspicions enough? Is that all that it'll take? Would Grummy sell you out? He's your mate. Well, sort of. Barely. He's a monster. You saved his job, his reputation. You're a human. He cooks your kind and serves them up on a plate every single day. I feel sick. Coming to a stop at table 20, I lower the plates down in front of the patrons. About time. You expect faster service in a place like this. The closest grumbles, saliva dripping from the corners of her mouth and onto her chest. Her companion snorts and edges forward in their seat. One bulging eye fixes on me. The other swings wildly around and down to the meal before her. 2 portions of cut shoulder, one with hock trimmings, I hope you enjoy. I stand up straight and turn to leave, but the creature to my immediate left grabs a hold of my arm. Not just a caress or a subtle grope, but a grab. I freeze and stare at her, immediately tensed. Waiter boy, this is not what we ordered. I hear a series of little squelches as all their eyes turn from their meals and fix themselves onto me. Her jaw quivers. The other patron snarls with frustration. And I'm sure you know we paid a great deal to guarantee our place here tonight. And I have so far been less than impressed with the quality of service. Of course, madam, my apologies. If you could just let go of my arm. She digs her fingers in tighter. I would like to speak with the owner, please. Helia. Madam, I'm afraid that's just not possible. It's rather busy tonight, but I can go and speak with the kitchen to find out what's happened. Had they even started preparing our meals? The other whines, moaning as she rubs a scaled hand across her belly. I'm not sure. It could just be a simple mix-up. If you could just let go of my arm and I can speak with the kitchen. No, if you won't get the owner, then I want to speak with the chef. Bring him out here. As I said, it's a busy one tonight, but I can definitely go and ask him. Bring the chef to me now. Madam, I steel myself and clench my jaw. Gathering my courage, I stare right into her face, expression cold. Release my arm. There is a strained pause, but to my relief, she does as I say, and reluctantly releases her grip, leaving a pale and painful mark in my skin. I'll do what I can, I tell her, picking the plates back up in shaking hands and returning to the kitchen, arm throbbing as I do so. The universe is against me tonight, it would seem. I'm all over the shattered remains of my plan. I think I'm going to just tell the girl to make a run for it. I'll act surprised when I see her and claim ignorance. If she's fast, she should be able to make it out of the front door in time. Maybe I can help her move from table to table to get a little closer and prove her chances. It's not a great plan, admittedly, but I'm running out of options. I just want her out of the restaurant. I can't breathe here. My thought process is broken by the sight of Bert back in the kitchen. He's holding the leg, as requested, and muttering to Grummy. I can't hear what he's saying from here over the clamor, but his gestures are wild. He runs a hand over his bulbous head. The creature looks panicked. Honestly, I have to stop myself from releasing a bitter and self-deprecating sudden laugh. The plan, I feel, could not be going much worse. If Bert has already noticed the missing girl as well, then I really have no choice. I have to get her out of here now before they conduct a search. Grummy puts a hand out and stops Bert mid-sentence. He looks at me and nods down at the full plates of food that I carry in my hands. What's the issue, John? He grunts. They claim that this isn't what they ordered, Grummy. I put the plates of steamy meat back on the counter. They want to talk to you, but I told them that since it was busy, you probably wouldn't. No, he says to my surprise. It's fine, I'll go talk to them. Bert starts spluttering, but Grummy simply puts down his knife and points the chef back to the cookers. Keep things running for me, Bert. I'll be back. The creature seems irritated to have had his concerns put on hold, but also rather pleased to have been granted this temporary authority. He mutters to himself but returns to work, grunting orders to the other chefs. Grummy puts a heavy hand on my shoulder as we walk back into the main lobby. I wonder if he can feel the layers of sweat that have permeated through the material. Get back to work for now, John. I'll handle this. Stay sharp. Stay sharp? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Is that a threat? I murmur in response and allow myself a breath as he releases me. He heads off to the right to the problem table, and I turn left to make my return to the one that hides the girl. The occupying patrons are standing up, thank God, pushing their chairs underneath and heading for the door. Thank you, the female says, and the male nods at me. They loop their arms as they walk the length of the carpet to the entrance, and their eyes squelch as they retract into their heads. I watch as their skin hardens and shifts through a wheel of colors, their camouflage clothing returning, rolls of flesh shivering and creasing to give the impression of folds in the fabric. The female pulls on a pair of gloves and her gnarled, four-fingered hands are hidden from view. They push on out through the doors and then the doors behind and into the evening cold, and a little gust of cool wind is blown into the restaurant as they do so. Just another couple out to dinner, I think to myself, and the moment passes. I reach for the tip that they have left in the center of the table and accidentally fumble the coins, dropping them to the floor. I quickly glance around and then crouch to the ground to pick them back up, muttering through the tablecloth as I do so. "They've gone," I whisper, "and we're going to get you out of here, okay?" I lift up the corner of the tablecloth and see the girl huddled tight between the chairs, staring back at me, wide-eyed and shivering. "On my signal, you run, okay?" I lift the tablecloth a little higher. "You see the entrance?" She nods. "On my signal, you make a break for it. Run for the doors as fast as you can and don't stop. Get as far from here as you can, you understand?" She nods again. "Okay, all right." I lower the tablecloth again and stand up straight, taking a step back, heart pounding like crazy. Everything seems to slow right down. I take in all the general murmur and chortling of the cannibals all around, the deep red decor of the restaurant walls and floor, the chomping of jaws and the splattering of meats across the tablecloth. I take a note of the bustle through the steamy windows to the kitchen at the far end of the room, and I realize that this is it. One way or another, I have acted against my programming, and I am now, for better or for worse, going to have to deal with the consequences. Here we go. I glance down as the tablecloth stirs. The edge lifts up ever so slightly, and I see the girl peer out from below, watching me, waiting for the signal. My heart hammers. I clench my fist, and a voice bellows my name from across the restaurant floor. "John!" comes the roar. I turn to stare at its source, as indeed does everyone else. It's Grummy, anger right across his face, staring right at me. The silence falls. I stare at the chef in surprise. I don't know how to react. I don't know what's happening. "I've had it, you hear me? I've had it with you, you bloody meatbag." Movement in the corner of my eye draws my attention. Helia strides from one of the adjoining corridors and out into the restaurant. "Grummy," she says, astounded. "What's going on?" Grummy raises an accusatory finger at me from across the restaurant. All the eyes in the room turn to look at me, and then flicker right back as the chef resumes speaking. "I have had it. I've had it with this incompetent waste of space. If I was given a penny for every time this meatbag screwed up, I'd be able to, well, retire tomorrow." I'm lost for words. What is he doing? What is he talking about? Helia glances at me. She puts out her hands, laughs awkwardly, and tries to calm the situation down. John is an unconventional employee, as we all will know, but he does his duties. "You haven't seen the things that I've seen, Helia. The thing's a menace. I want him gone, do you hear me? Gone. I'm sick and tired of having him in my kitchen. So it's time to decide. It's either him or me." Realization strikes like a bolt of lightning. Don't you see, John? Don't you see what he's doing? He's playing an act. He's giving you your out. He's going to bring an end to your contract. He's setting you free. I stand there gaping, unsure how to respond. A patron springs up from his seat. It's the Scorpion Man, the one with the fangs and the fly-like eyes. He points the two arms of his closest side right at me. "This human saved my life," he bellows. "I don't care what else he might have done. He's more than earned his place here. You can't fire him, you can't." The female that grabbed my wrist at table 20 rises in turn. "He's incompetent. What else can you expect from a sack of flesh? Can their kind even read? Get him out." Chaos takes hold. More of the customers jump to their feet. Chairs are knocked to the floor as the clamor grows in volume. He's nothing but polite. I couldn't care about his bloody background. It brings down the tone of the restaurant having him here. It's a disgrace. He should be sacked. How am I supposed to focus on my meal when I can see him strutting around, wafting his scent right next to me? It's maddening. Now. The moment is now. Grummy roars again, shouting and gesticulating and drawing much of the attention of the room as he does so. And I look down at the erased edge of the tablecloth before me. I look at the girl. I look into her eyes. Go, I murmur, and she does. Like a hare, she bursts from the tablecloth and rockets across the room. The red of the apron that covers her is close to the red of the carpet, and amongst the havoc, she is not obvious at all. I watch her go with unblinking eyes and jaws clenched tight. I watch her push through the entrance doors, and then through the doors beyond, and out and away into the night. And then she's gone. The girl has escaped, and I breathe. But I'm not the only one who saw her go. My eyes meet Grummy's. His face passes through a quick and passionate cycle of emotions: confusion, surprise, indignation, anger, and then bitter amusement perhaps, maybe even a little guilt. He clenches his jaw. He narrows his eyes. "All right, I think that's quite enough," shouts Helia, her chins wobbling. Hush returns to the restaurant. The patrons settle awkwardly back into their seats, and she turns to me. My eyes leave Grummy's and meet with hers. "John, tell me, how long have you been with us?" "About a year now, ma'am," I reply. She nods. We listen to the wind whistle beyond the walls. "And you've served us well. From my perspective at least, as understood by the terms of our contract, I had been hoping that you would continue to work for us for a further few years, but..." She shoots a look over to Grummy. "But I can't lose my head chef, I just can't. So, unless you would care to change your mind, Grummy." The customers look from me to Helia to Grummy. The tension hangs like a great weight in the air. "Please, mate," I think to him. "Come on, Grummy. Just let this one go, please. Let this one go." And Grummy frowns, and then he sighs, and rubs a hand over his head. "I just want him gone, Helia. Get him out of here." I let out a breath. "In that case, John," says Helia bitterly, "your contract is hereby terminated. Thank you for your service." The sign on the door and its copies across the walls of the restaurant collapse at once. They fall from their pins as if knocked by a great force, and shatter against the carpet, dissolving instantly into nothing more than piles of dust. I watch as the pupils of every single creature in that restaurant dilate at once. I edge towards the door, taking off my apron as I do so, and hanging it over a nearby chair. "I understand," I reply in a shaky voice. I look to Grummy. "I understand." Still facing the room, I back up and out of the door. "Goodbye," I murmur, as the nearest patrons hungrily lick their lips. Saliva bubbles at the edges of their mouth as their lips peel back to reveal the rows of gray-green, blood-stained teeth behind. I push out into the cold of the winter's night, and I run. I run away, and I don't look back. Thus concluded my time as the only human employee of a restaurant for cannibals. And yes, before you say so, I know that they aren't technically cannibals as such. Or do I? Because the creatures I served in that terrible place all had their own unique set of monstrous features. They all share the bulging eyes and the salivating jaws, and the semi-scaled skin. But they also shared a myriad of strikingly human qualities, and not just physical ones either. I haven't written off the possibility that they were humans once, or something like them, long ago perhaps. It's food for thought, if you'll pardon the pun. I saw the girl again shortly after my final shift. She was happy to see me. Her name's Erin, by the way. I roughly corroborated the story she gave to her parents and to the police, though I dressed the creatures up as people smugglers, rather than flesh-eating monsters. The place was raided within the day, but there was nothing there, just an empty and run-down old building in ruin. Had the restaurant always looked like that to the untrained eye? Was I simply unable to see it for what it truly was, now that my contract had expired? Or had the restaurant moved on, to somewhere else in another city perhaps? I do not know. I may never know. But as I stand here now on the edge of the street, coat drawn about my shoulders and empty can of petrol by my feet, I think perhaps that I do not care. As the sun rises on a new morning, I watch the building go up in flames. I watch the fire dance in the windows. I watch the roof collapse in on itself with a burst of thick black smoke. I am free now, yes, but the knowledge of this place of nightmares will haunt me for the rest of my life. I do not know where they acquire the humans for their fees. I had assumed that they had a farm of sorts, at some hidden location maybe. The girl's swift return to her family in the city, however, threw some doubt over that theory. I wonder why Grummy chose to allow me to leave, why he chose to stay silent when he saw the girl escape. I'm thankful for his decision, don't get me wrong, but it troubles me that I am no longer able to consider the creatures I interacted with as simply monsters in black and white. They were monsters, of course, and yet, I shake my head. I was around them for far too long indeed. I picked up the empty can of petrol and walk on into the bright and sparkling dawn of the day. There's work to be done. I need to find myself a new job, after all.